some
more
other
of
interesting
these,
people. Yeah.
Philosophical, long-term, how do you reach AGI kind of questions?
What's the architecture that takes us in the right direction?
Yeah. Okay, but you used at least 4 V100s. How long time does it take? Can you give any numbers?
A couple of hours, something. Maybe half a day, at worst. Not so bad. Longer than that is hard to work with.
Yeah. But if you were to switch to an A100, it would probably be,
I would guess like about the same, because the thing here is like we just need the memory to not have to be smart about how to do online triplet mining. So we want to have it large mini batch sizes, but it's like, is it actually the speed of the GPU that's the bottleneck? Probably not.
You don't think so in that?
No, not in this setting, but so it's mostly like laziness. Like computers are cheap, and being smart with people is expensive. So like, okay, let's just 4x the machines, and that's good enough. Kind of.
Can I steal a question angle here a little bit? I mean, like, so...
Are we live, by the way? I don't know. No, right?
Yes, of course. Of course we are. We're live. Okay. But what's happening upstairs right now is Hopi Data Science Open. So it's a very cool setup in 2 weeks where we have decked out the whole Hyperite Data Club with state-of-the-art workstations. And it's sponsored by HP and NVIDIA, and we have different talks going on different topics.
Yep.
And of course, one angle on this is to sort of zoom in on, what's the ultimate dream machine from a workstation perspective for the modern data scientist? Or now we need to maybe decompose that into a machine learning engineer or a data engineer
it's
or
different.
Whatever. It is, isn't it?
It is quite different. And how the machine people need depends on what kind of data science they want to do. Really.
Exactly.
And since I mostly work with deep learning models, it happens to be that I don't really feel like it's very attractive to have a machine that you always know is there for you, that you can always use for training deep learning models. But I haven't really found a laptop or any kind of portable
with that
thing
real power
that would actually be good enough for it. It would be like you could run older things which are still valuable to do. You could try out things in a REPL fashion, like notebook interactively. But at some point, you probably want to submit it to your big tower computer somewhere in a fridge. Very
yes, you were
cold.
joking. You were joking. The perfect machine would be a tower in your fridge,
a little cable,
and a small cable, and then a super cool, super slim GUI human interaction interface.
Yeah, for deep learning.
For deep learning, yeah.
And if you're saying like I'm sitting with scikit-learn, I want a lot of RAM and maybe like multiple threads to try out different types of random forests or something, hyperparameters. Maybe then you could get a workstation type laptop for that. But for longer running workloads that run for hours and should be like fully utilizing the hardware, laptops tend to throttle, right? Yeah. They tend to kind of work for 5 minutes and then they go quite slow.
It's very interesting now. So we need to go quite deep down into defining what type of data science are we talking about,
pretty
and
much.
what is machine learning.
So I would go like last person that asked me like, what computer should I get for work? I need a laptop. I'm a deep learning person. I work with computer vision for games. Okay. My recommendation was like get a MacBook Air.
Wrong answer, by the way.
Because it's like good battery life, no fans, and you probably just SSH or submit jobs to a cluster. And like, oh, that was good. And then he seems to like it. So I don't know.
So but the wrong brand.
And I have a desktop at home, by the way. So it's like I don't really even, I don't know.
And how do you take up?
I feel old.
And let's see now. If you get a tower at home, like a workstation tower,
that's what I do.
What would you get? How would you stack that up? What's your dream machine?
I guess now it's RTX 4090 would be sweet if there is one.
4090, is that out?
Yeah, or it's getting released now or something, right? The 4000 series was just announced. Reviews are just kind of coming in. Okay, so no, I don't think one can buy them. But
let's dumb it down for Henrik here. So what are we talking about? We're talking about a
graphics card.
Graphics
but
card?
Not for graphics, but for like running PyTorch
But
models.
hardcore GPU processors fully stacked inside your tower,
But also, okay, so this is an entirely different perspective of this. It sounded very attractive to get a big desktop tower with a good GPU for training PyTorch models or running research code locally, so you never have to wait 5 minutes in a queue on a cluster, because that's super annoying. this sounds great. But then like, okay, if I'm gonna have this at home and pay for the electricity of it,
exactly.
For some reason now it feels like I should probably ask the employer to like, could I get some extra payment for my?
Here's my electricity bill.
Yeah. Because I see it in like we have measuring at home. When I see when I have been working with modeling. On the electricity bill.
I used to work with Vattenfall, and you can get your metering to understand all your users, brukare, right? And then this is jacuzzi. This is the tower.
This is a training loop in PyTorch. Yeah.
So did you get the free electricity for home when working at Vattenfall?
You wish, man. They're fucking stingy. I mean, you get good deals. You get a very attractive, normal but good attractive.
But this is an argument for SSH or remote clusters, because if you co-locate where you spend the electricity close to where you make it, like there's solar there, or there's actually a Vattenfall there, a literal one next to the data center. That's going to be hard to beat.
This is what happens when Facebook moves their huge data centers up to Norrland in Sweden.
Yeah. So I guess I'm trying to just learn to be like, I can only work with the internet up, and if it's down, I can't work, and that's fine. That's not how I grew up with computers, but that's how it's going to be. Like being entirely dependent on having connectivity to do anything. It's been the case in my workflow for 5 or 10 years anyway. Like if GitHub is down, I can't do anything, or Slack is down, I guess we go home. But it doesn't. I still don't feel like that's okay. I would like my computer to work even if the internet doesn't exist. But that's not really valuable anymore.
So your preferred text or computer setup, I guess.
MacBook Air.
It's not MacBook Air, but it's a thin laptop.
You know what? Maybe my iPad would work. Actually.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah.
Now, but I take the opposite approach here, and I have the 38 in my laptop. I must say it's more of a cool factor, and sometimes it's really annoying because the battery life on this is horrible.
Yeah, because it's sort of electricity. Yeah.
Yeah, you get.
Yes.
Yeah.
So what is that all about?
I mean, of course, you can run a model surprisingly fast. I even remember in Peltorian times we measured the speed of the laptop and the GPU that had to one of the servers we had, which had a much more expensive GPU in it, and mine was faster. The laptop was faster than the server.
But I also remember meetings where you run out to get your charger, and a lot of those meetings.
So it was also like a battery problem or a GPU problem.
Cool, it's also the laptop faster than the server.
It was cool, but it's also the airplane lift-off sound when it's like, Anders, are you listening? No, I'm working.
It's like these kind of meditation sounds, that you get really focused with when you hear.
But how can a laptop be faster than a tower?
Architectures, right?
Is it architecture?
I guess.
This one was extreme. It had arrayed SSD disks in it, and that machine didn't
SSD
have.
disk is the key.
It still had mechanical disks and not rated, I don't think. And in reality, it was the data loading rather than the GPU that was the bottleneck, and then mine was faster.
So it's all SSD now in terms of storage?
It's hard to buy a computer without that, I guess.
Exactly, right.
But and this is like 5 years ago, something. Still at that time also SSD, I guess. No, but hardware is interesting. But it's also like the things we're running. It's like I'm writing some Python code to run some C++ code somewhere on a computer somewhere.
Yeah.
I would bet that most of the optimizations here could be improved by just software, right? I guess we talked about this before, but compilation or XLA or like compiling your model training thingy to something that's actually performant for your environment.
Yeah.
And maybe that we shouldn't throw just more transistors at the problem.
But if I now take the HP who is sponsoring here is actually part of the global setup where you have now they're branching out for the workstation and really understanding data science. And of course then we are talking about what's the full stack of the workstation. So what do you want as a dream machine coming loaded as part of the operating system, seamlessly working well? I mean, like very simple examples now. What will tag something in the HP universe that this sale was a data science machine? For instance, it has Ubuntu.
Or Anaconda.
Anaconda. There are a couple of different softwares that sort of, if you don't have that as a data scientist, you don't really have a data science machine. So what are those softwares that we want to have very close to the operating system?
Yeah. Okay, so having been kind of the DevOpsy person in multiple different teams now, I'm starting to realize that this really depends on the particular people in your particular team.
So
certain tech choices are good in certain teams.
Yes.
So it isn't necessarily like I can go into any room of data scientists and say, we're going to use Anaconda. Sometimes that makes perfect sense. And sometimes it might even make more sense to say, no, we're actually going to use Nix. And they will go like, great, because we are interested and we already kind of started with that and it's already used in production on the web server side or something. So it's a bit of
but you have a
dynamic
couple of things,
thing.
like Ubuntu, whatever you want to do in order to run GPUs and in NVIDIA machines that sort of to a market standard now.
Sure.
Couldn't you argue that some of those things should be, out of the box of the workstation?
But my current best thinking of how to work together in a team of more than one person doing machine learning models would be that everyone always works with the remote computer. That you just accept the sluggishness of it initially. But maybe like if we all said, we are really going to use Kubeflow pipelines, we're going to just double down on it.
Okay.
And live with that. Then we will have a hard time initially, but we'll have an easier time over time because we don't need to remember like, hey, this you forgot to share the data because it's only on your laptop and you don't even work here anymore. And like,
this problem is, having things stuck on someone's notebook.
It's horrendously expensive, I think,
much bigger
over time and super hard to fix. So maybe it's better to say, no, we always talk to the cluster always. Everyone sees everyone's progress. You can reuse components. That's a
But then
dream.
the workstation needs to be polyglot cluster ready for any type of.
Maybe it's enough to have an iPad and it has a Python interpreter and it has maybe like Kubeflow pipelines ready to go. And you never really run anything on it. You just submit it.
But this is the point, right? So what different protocols, or what do you want to commit? Is it Kubeflows? Is it something else? It should be really good at this part at least, right?
Yeah, that or Flight or whatever. There's so many similar ideas, similar solutions to the same thing. Right?
Yeah, but a good workstation that has that core fundamental understanding of a data science team committing to a general server should be flexible for the data science team to seamlessly decide which type of protocol they want to use, and therefore it should be ready to take on Kubeflow or Flight or whatever.
Yeah, sure. It's also, okay, so if you talk about workstations, the type of data scientist that needs a workstation is probably the one that works with like fluid simulations or something where it's like a visualization that has to be kind of in real-time rendering, and you're kind of working such that network latency will always be too long. But for machine learning, that's necessarily not the case. Like if it's a 30 milliseconds time lag between you doing it and seeing the result, that's fine. But that might not be fine for, let's say, games development, 3D rendering stuff where you need to see it locally, or recording audio or something, where it's like you need a workstation, sure. But machine learning workflows, I have a hard time justifying having a workstation for it. It's nice, but I don't think it's necessarily the right choice, actually.
Could you summarize some of the ideas now for the best computer hardware and software, I guess, setup that we can have? If you start a bit, from the laptop side or the client side or whatever we call it, just the thinnest possible client, I guess?
Yeah, I guess. Yeah, but I've had problems with this approach too. So
you need to have a great keyboard at least, right?
Yeah, like a battery life screen, keyboard.
Keyboard.
No, so the interface
iPad.
Between me and the machine is important.
Yes.
But maybe not how fast it can run things. No. Though I've had problems with this extreme approach before, that I started TensorBoard, and TensorBoard likes to load things into RAM, and I had 8 gigs, so I crash every time. I'm like, why is this so client-side heavy? Because the community mostly has workstations, so they never optimized for the thin client use case. This is a few years ago. Maybe it's better today. But there are some kind of
web browser. You need at least 32 gigs. Right?
Yeah, I guess. Yeah,
even a web browser is heavy client.
Yeah, but yeah, but it has bit me in the ass.
So RAM is quite, you can't go completely.
But there are visualization tools for data science that are heavy on the client side, and it's hard to get around because they were written for chunkier machines. And so I guess actually the answer here would be like use whatever is normal, and then it will probably be easier than using something that's not normal. Like if I come in with a Raspberry Pi 400, which is an interesting thought experiment, I will have a great time getting nothing done. I'm still going to have a great time.
Cool. Yeah. And I have the thick client, so to speak, with the GPU in it, but it's really...
Why do you want that?
Cool.
It's just a cool factor. I must agree. Sometimes it's nice to be able to actually run stuff on the GPU while developing, because it is a different thing. It's a different code path if you actually run it on a CPU or the GPU. So just being able to do that and still load at least small models in the GPU is useful.
Yeah.
And
it's very annoying to get a bug after submitting a job.
Yes.
But it's also, what about the demo presentation devil? Like sometimes, or a lot of us has to really try to show something in production on stage. And we don't fucking want lag at that point in time. So therefore I would have the fucking fastest machine to make my demo run smoothly.
Sure. Or like not having the dependency on the cloud to be up. This is really awkward when it goes down just before the presentation.
That's what I mean, right? So the demo devil means that you need to be able to have ways sometimes with your laptop that where you sort of, I can run this standalone.
If you really want to do that, you should bring your mid tower setup and put it under the speaking stand, and then right. So that's a good point.
So that's the client, and then the server side, and I guess you can choose to have on-premise machines and these kind of workstations running there, or you can choose on the cloud, and you can choose to have either you buy up front a number of machines that you want to run with at the company side, or you choose to have the more flexible, what's the Amazon for it? Elastic, I guess.
A cloud setup.
That where you actually just use or pay for what you use for and can scale up when necessary. What's your preference there when it comes to the server side?
So I've done both extremes, only on-prem, like commodity hardware, affordable. It's kind of fun to have it, it's there, you pay up front. You never feel this mental burden of leaving a machine on, because you don't pay necessarily more for having it on.
And it is usually cheaper, right? So
it is cheaper, yes. I think so. I feel it is when I try to guess how it will cost, because the risk. But it's also like the risk of it getting, fire, burglary, breaking, just electrical, whatever. It's hard to calculate. Is it cheaper actually, or does it feel cheaper? The knowns are cheaper, but the unknowns are hard to guess. So I don't know.
So when it crashes, it actually is a lot of costs that you
could be time, right? So I think like. For my last office, we had the on-premise kind of workstation setup for training. But my first month, we're headbutting with the memory, just having like whatever bit flips, weirdness. It says like data corruption. I'm like, I don't know. It's the exact same checksum. So I guess it's in memory. And we spend about a week or two of work hours on figuring that out. And that cost about... So
we had it even in Peltorian, we had a number of GPUs on the server side that went down and they broke, and we didn't know how to fix them, and someone had to go out to the cluster and just getting access to that and going in there and not knowing how to fix it.
Well, it feels like Google Cloud is almost cheap if you actually knew the costs in hindsight.
So the TCO, the total cost of ownership, is potentially cheaper on the cloud.
Could be,
It really depends also a lot, I think, on the type of jobs you're doing.
I'm thinking always deep learning. But
because if it's just massive storage, or if it's just massive compute, it really depends what you're optimizing for. I would argue there are cases where on-prem is way cheaper.
It might really be, absolutely.
Even then with the redundancy in because what happens when you do it on-prem, you really need to think, how much redundancy and failover and disaster recovery is in the cost of the cloud setup. And you need to really pay for that in order to have an apples-to-apples comparison.
You get a lot of stuff from, let's say, Google Cloud.
So of course, if you undersize one machine without any failover, that's cheap, right? But that's not how you can run a business.
No, it's a lot of risk.
Yes.
And is the risk expensive? Depends on if you want to gamble, right? So I don't know.
Which depends on what type of business you're in.
So is it expensive that it is down?
Exactly.
Well, it depends, right? For me, it feels like yes, because it kind of hurts my flow, and I am quite expensive in terms of work, hours, salary,
we know
thinking.
You're expensive.
No, like people are expensive, and having them just like go to Webhallen
and then you come into I used to work at Vattenfall, and where sort of fundamental failure is not an option.
And then there's I guess that's the easy setting. Like we cannot have downtime. Good.
Exactly.
Then we don't need to think about it really.
If you have stuff in production, it's really nice to have it on the cloud, I would say as well.
I think so going forwards, because I had this half year now thinking about using on-prem, and we did that, and it's interesting and fun. And it's also faster, actually. It's like Google Cloud is quite slow. You really need to dig around to find it to be faster than what you can buy in a store.
They launched in Sweden now as well, you know.
Yeah. No, I don't mean the network. It's more like the GPUs they've had is like 16 gigs max. It's a V100 or maybe A100, which is cool, but it's still you just go into a store and buying for the same money, you get a really fast training loop. But you get all of the inherent risk and maintenance of it. So next month I will double down again on cloud, like only cloud.
So how many times have
back and forth.
How many times in your life do you think your like philosophy have flipped? I'm fucking over this. I'm going here.
4 times. I've gone to the extremes like 4 times now, which is stupid.
And going to the extreme is maybe also you, right? I'm so fucking pissed off with this. I'm going to go here.
Yeah, grass is greener. Okay, okay.
Well, what's the hybrid then? When can is there a convex here so you can get the ball to stay sort of?
It's an interesting thought, right? But I think maybe the hybrid, like doing a little bit of both, is just a blurry mess of the worst of both.
Yeah. So the point is, it sounds good in theory, really. But you get both. You don't get the both positives. You get the both negatives.
Yeah. So it's like if everyone in the team only uses a cloud project, then you get the benefits. If a single person does not, you kind of get all the problems of having on-prem.
Okay, so to summarize a bit, thin client, filled with lots of RAM because you still need that. And I guess a lot of CPU cores as well.
Yeah, I guess.
It's really annoying, but not a GPU at least, potentially.
Super cool interface. Really super.
A lot of shining lights and high, loud fans.
I can hear the Razer chair with a thin client. Do you know the Razer chair?
No. Does it have RGB lights?
Google.
Then I want it.
It looks. I think Razer. No, it's called the. It looks like a scorpion chair. So the chair looks like a scorpion. You sit.
The one that Robert has, you mean, or?
He could potentially have a scorpion chair. So Google the scorpion chair. This is what you need. This is the real. This is what we need.
That is actually cool.
Out the full cinnamon chair.
It's not that expensive. I looked. I actually measured my office if I could have that. It's so cool, right?
Yes.
This is the workstation I'm talking about.
Yeah, okay.
I would love that, actually.
Isn't that cool?
Yeah.
I think this is a very, very fast way to be kicked out of home, yes.
Yeah.
But I'm not going to have it at home. I'm not going to have it at home. I'm going to have it in my office.
Yeah, everyone who starts get a scorpion chair.
Yeah.
But minimalism is quite nice as a mindset for data science. Like, do you actually need this? Nah, not really. Okay, let's skip it. Like, trying to get more to that.
Maybe as a healthy opposite to when we go into the consumption. Everybody goes nuts. That we need this, we need this, we need this, we need this.
Yeah, and I guess I'm a big troublemaker in terms of bringing in every new tool into the stack. I'm like, oh, that's cool. Do you need it? Nah, maybe.
So you're maybe this is a 40-year-old crisis coming on, Carl. I had the same topic, right? I want to play with that game. I want to do windsurfing, surfing, skateboarding, and then I realized what I really want to do, and less is more.
Yeah, maybe.
Right?
Pendulum swings both. Yeah.
You're getting there, Carl. I think it's a 40-year-old life crisis that is talking to you.
Yeah, maybe. I'm just gonna use Jupyter and Python and learn to like it. It's gonna be enough.
That's another topic, but we didn't really touch the software side. But I guess for development purposes, it's just having some IDE. What's your preferred development environment?
Controversial statement, but I think VS Code is all right.
What is okay? Unpack for the
Visual Studio Code is good. It gives you a lot of comfort. It's very ergonomic. Gets a lot of nice things, but the cost here is kind of like Internet Explorer. People are scared of the same thing happening again. Like Microsoft is owning the whole thing really, and they have telemetry in it.
It's free, to be frank.
It's free,
not like the original Visual Studio.
But
no, right? Yeah. So, but it's like it's a free software that's really good, and they spend a lot of hours on making it really good, and you feel like oh, this is nice, I like it. But I also know in the back of my mind that like the future that this leads to will be a bit problematic.
Yeah. Why?
Because probably that they have this kind of classic embrace, extend, extinguish mindset once again. That. They want to make we also work with open source. And we make it slightly better. And then when they dominate, the worry here in the community will be like...
When they dominate?
Yeah, probably they will, right? Because it's so good, VS Code. And it's already, we are in the era of VS Code. There was some hack news about. And
so Jupyter is not as cool anymore.
So it's confusing, right? VS Code can give you the Jupyter experience because they have a Jupyter extension officially from Microsoft, which is almost better than the traditional Jupyter notebook server and Jupyter Lab as well. Like it's slightly easier to use. It has more features that you can need.
The code navigation still works in notebooks as well.
Yeah, so I've been a happy user.
Unpack this a little bit, like, because they're not a one-to-one overlap here. They're doing slightly. What is VS versus Jupyter? What are we talking about here?
So Visual Studio Code is just like a code editor. It can do like if you would like to write Java in it, it has a Java extension for that. So then it has
and it has a lot of extensions.
A lot of extensions for different languages and stuff. But so
this is one of. So then you are saying VS Code as a code editor.
Yeah, but they also have a lot of focus on notebook editing. And that particular extension that they really, so Microsoft really focuses on the notebook support in VS Code.
And if I now contrast that, what is Jupyter and what is the core proposition of Jupyter?
So I guess the Jupyter Notebook server can only do Jupyter Notebooks.
Yeah.
Right. So you could also argue like, oh, but I would like one tool to do more things than one thing. So I want to also edit my Python files, for example, something that Jupyter Notebook has, or the server has been historically pretty bad at, like just editing regular Python files.
So with the VS Code, you get sort of, a little bit more Swiss Army-ized, where you can get a couple of things doing, and it does the notebook pretty well as well.
It does it also actually even potentially better. So that's the scary thing here. Like it's not only doing more, it kind of does everything a little bit better.
And now we're on drugs, where the pusher is giving it out for free.
Yeah, but that's the classic concern, and because it is this kind of story again and again and again, and being a bit of a hippie, Linux hippie, I like the idea of everyone owning our software that we run. I like the idea of it at least, and I like the idea that if we're going to do autonomous decision making, it feels really important that everyone is kind of owning it and not just one big company somewhere in somewhere.
So the difference here, Linux is a true open source in a different way, and here we have a corporate open source.
Yeah, so there's a difference between open source and a free software is usually how people want to talk about it, right? A free software is something that is free as in it doesn't have any owner, it's free.
And then you buy an Apple laptop.
That
makes sense?
Hypocrite.
No, but I had a lot of people who love.
But I use VS Code. Short answer, yes, it's good.
So given the alternatives, then what's your second choice? I mean, if you have Vim, you have Emacs or IntelliJ, Eclipse.
I think like once a year I sit down and do Vim tutor. I think like, people say it's cool. And you also get social status for using it. Like I would like to be a cool person.
So you need Win.
So I go through it and I go like, but why am I spending so much time learning this? That
if you do the sysadmin, or if you go to other machines and you need to.
I use Nano. I do. It's okay. There are like arrow keys, windows, bindings, everything it can do. It says there in the bottom. But the problem with saying that is that people laugh when you say it.
Well, the training wheels are still on.
For writing machine learning stuff, at least, I don't feel like the bottleneck. Applications development, you need a lot of good editing because you're going to write quite a lot of stuff. But for machine learning, the bottleneck is very seldom how fast I type or how fast I navigate the code base. The bottleneck really tends to be how fast the code runs or if I understand the maths behind it.
But okay, so if we unpack that a bit more, because one thing is actually the model training and building the model itself,
or
versus actually building an application or a system on top of it.
Sure.
Wouldn't you agree that like 95% of the time of building a system or an application is spent on other things than the model?
Yeah, but maybe not something that happens to be on my table so often, right? But for a company, yes. And then, I mean, okay, so this half year I've been sitting a lot in Visual Studio, the full-blown Visual Studio.
With the whole agile team setup, blah, 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 everything.
Well, it felt very not agile to me. But I liked it in a bit because it comes with a lot of good stuff. And Visual Studio is a really good software. So like this is like we want to set a breakpoint in this C++ code because we have some seg fault. And not using Visual Studio for that would be almost stupid, right? So I used it and I built some things with that for a new product at the company, and it's
so now classic software engineering land.
Yeah, very like classic kind of. Now you have memory management to think about. But Visual Studio felt kind of neat. I have used it in the past, a long time ago, and I used it today recently again, and kind of liked it.
And just closing the topic, we're still on the client. It would be nice to just close off with the service side as well, in terms of cloud versus on-prem versus hardware, whatever. So thinking about that, okay. Go to the service side.
Go. Come on.
No, we've spoken too long about this. It's
like you had a good topic here. I felt it. Come on.
Server side, then, I guess some of the choices, and let me know what you prefer, would be either to have your own workstation or server running besides you on the desk in some kind of data center somewhere.
This is the fridge, right?
Yeah.
Or in the cloud. What's your preference there?
Probably easier with cloud, just IT procurement. They get scared when you have on-prem.
And the pros and cons of that, I guess, it potentially could be more expensive with the cloud, at least if
short term, definitely expensive.
Yeah, and know what you're doing. Don't leave things on.
Yeah, but the observability is nice, and the not having risk of burglary or whatever is nice. There's too many things that are good, and going back to the IT department to upgrade hardware feels like a super annoying process compared to just changing instance type the same day that they release a new GPU.
Right.
So you can actually be choosing things yourself. So I guess cloud.
I think Google is releasing the H100 soon as well.
Oh, that would be cool. Yeah, but just imagine going back to I'm gonna go to my sysadmin and ask if we can order one from Dustin. And that would take about a month.
4 weeks to wait for the machine. 2 weeks to wait for the operating system to be set up. 2 weeks to get to the actual data where it needs to be.
So those things.
8 weeks.
And also there's a compliancy thing here that's quite important. This data, if it's user data or some interaction, some personal identifiable thing, should it be allowed to be on my office workstation? Probably not. And if we have it in a cloud setting, then at least I don't need to be particularly smart. Someone at the company needs to.
But I think this is really tricky, right? Because we have this classical view on-prem. We need to have it on-prem to be safe against the cloud, right?
No, that's very classic. Yeah.
That's
I'm thinking the opposite.
But now you're doing the complete opposite. Yeah. Yes, when you say on-prem, do you actually realize that half of it that you said was on-prem is on someone's workstation?
Yeah. It's quite scary.
Which is really not so good.
Yeah, no, I could imagine that being very hard to make compliant in terms of if I want to train models on user behavior data, I would probably want to only communicate with a cluster somewhere that is managed.
So then if we were to go the cloud, I guess you can argue, and for some startups or whatnot, it could be useful to have actually things on-prem. But if you still go on cloud, I guess there are lots of ways to use the cloud as well. One is simply to fire up a virtual machine and then install everything, manage everything, and run stuff there, right? Yeah. Or you use some of the more hosted or managed services that they have for running pipelines, or what's the latest term for Google AI platform? It's Vertex.
Vertex.
Right? Yeah. They changed the name so many times. I don't know what is called.
Unified Classic Vertex.
And XFS or what? Yeah, so many things.
Yeah, it's confusing.
What do you think about them? For me, it feels.
I played around with Vertex Pipelines, which is a managed solution for Kubeflow pipelines. Right. So you don't need to bump your GKE control plane because you don't even see it. It's, I guess, a multi-tenant.
So the bottom line, they're abstracting some of the coding away.
Yeah, the maintenance of the underlying compute environment. Because I couldn't really, as a data science person, I couldn't care less really about where is it running, as long as it runs.
Editing, hundreds YAML files.
I love YAML, yes. But. Yeah, it's tricky. Vertex Pipelines has felt very brittle, and the whole product launch was really premature, and I don't think it was useful until maybe about now. Just looking at the user group and how many complaints and problems people seem to have. But it's also tempting to think grass is greener, so I would just build my own solution. Yes. And maybe that is way worse. So I think I will learn to like Vertex Pipelines and just acknowledge
but what is your go-to cloud approach?
It happens. a go-to-cloud approach.
Yeah, with when I'm talking about this stuff, I really want to do virtual machines on my own. This stuff is a good service, so I'm gonna use that right out of the box.
Yeah.
So what is your go-to mindset on this?
Maybe this is me being a bit naive, but I like the idea of having it so managed as possible.
Good.
And so high abstraction as possible. But usually that means that you get into immature products on at least Google Clouds, probably Amazon is the same and Azure is the same. That their high level products don't have the same battle testing as a VM, because the compute engine thing has been around for like almost 10 years or something.
But we can distill this down as Carl Thomé's cloud principles. I
don't want to manage anything.
No, so we're starting with I don't want to manage anything. Yeah. That's my
unless I really have to.
That's the first principle. I want to go manage, unless it's premature or what do you call it? Not battle tested
somehow like that.
Or it's and then what's my fallback? What are there are principles in your thinking here?
Yeah, I mean, so for example, concretely, I would web app. Okay, try first with a cloud function. If that's not good enough, you go to Cloud Run, and if that's still not good enough, you go to a compute engine VM.
Okay, so here's the principle. So you go from managed service
and you lower your abstraction.
And you lower your abstraction as you're thinking, as you need it, battle tested.
Before. So it's like, but this approach, I don't think this is necessarily the smart approach. Like I've also seen people say, we will need control and flexibility and a custom tailored solution. We already know that. So we will start with a Kubernetes cluster. Or not even that, maybe like VMs and orchestrate them with Bash. I don't know, but that I don't like.
Do you have an order of attack?
Yeah, you started with Kubernetes engine, right? Why not Cloud Run?
Why didn't you go Lambda all the way?
Well, I've been doing Kubernetes for so long, so for me, it's nice to have that level of control. Yeah. But I think in general, the principle that you stated is very much accurate. Start with as highly managed as possible, and trickle down as you need it, if you need it.
Yes.
But sometimes it's cool to have control.
Sure.
I mean, when you don't know what's happening, it's nice to, I understand exactly what's happening now. I can troubleshoot errors much easier than I can if some mysterious trace is happening somewhere. It's a managed thing, and I have no idea what happened. Yeah,
so because it's really hard. Like I've had a Cloud Run service running for end user testing, and it has been breaking, and I can't really understand it or why, because I'm not even allowed to see what it's actually where it's running. Right?
Annoying.
Yeah, and those things can be a bit mission critical. Not in this setting, but like I could imagine if I happen to be a CTO that said in my startup we will only use Cloud Run. I could imagine that really becoming a catastrophic failure at some point, where it's like, we really wish we could see this hard disk. Like, no. So this is a bit of a hard.
But then you need to tweak or add to the principles. That we have the principles from going as managed as possible, then trickle down. And then you have the principles when you run your contextual situation. It can be compliance, it can be security, it can be for different reasons.
Sure.
That in this instance, to not understand what is happening on the lowest level, or to follow the lineage or really dissect it, is not an option. I need to have visibility because of this. Therefore, I actually need to lower my abstraction level. Is that fair?
Yeah, something like that. Or like there's some tension between control and maintenance. You can get a lot of power and control, but you don't want to maintain, and you need to get a bit of a good mix.
So here's the principle. The first principle is manage and then trickle down. The second principle is the balance between maintenance and control in relation to your use case. Maybe?
Exactly, something like that. Like I guess if you upfront know that we will want to really have full control of this, if you need that for some reason. But I would really try to squeeze it into the managed solution anyway, because we need to have encryption at rest or something. Okay, maybe we should read the manual first about what we can get in the managed solution before we just disregard it.
But the first principle is the first principle, and this is the second principle, so then it would work.
But it's like software engineers, we are we like the things we are familiar with, and we think they are better, because they are, for us, easy.
Comfort zone,
yes. And there's a big confusion between, this sounds such like a Richicki thing, but there's such a big confusion between what's easy and what's maybe simple. And a managed solution might be the more simple thing, but it's not necessarily easy because you need to read a new manual.
Yeah,
and getting those confused.
It's easy when it works.
Yeah, sure.
But when it starts breaking and doing troubleshooting on it, can be even much more complex than otherwise.
That's true, but I'm also going for the whole like, I want to have a Java web server running on my desktop that I bought at Webhallen because I know how that works. Okay, that's something you know, and that's why it feels easy. But it's definitely not simple because now you have like 3 disciplines in one person. And to like onboard more teammates
but this is the third principle. It's the temporal principle around your maturity and journey and how much you're into vertical integration scaling versus horizontal scaling.
For example, yes.
So when you go at so the principles depend on what you said. This is true. And then you have the maintenance versus control principle.
Yeah.
And then you have the maturity principle or horizontal scaling principle, where in the end, fuck it, I need to standardize on a couple of, there's too much cognitive overload here because it's too complex, it's too big. This is a rat's nest now.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
So that then
think really about how it will feel tomorrow to your peer is very interesting in tech platform. So at some point we will have like press tab and GitHub Copilot will generate a cloud project for you. And then
infrastructure as code done.
Yeah, whatever.
I had this as a topic actually. I think Copilot would be fun to speak more about.
Just Terraform it.
Done.
Oh, I guess we have 3 projects. Okay. Click.
But then you get a Dali joke on this. You know, you need to be a prompter. Because
that's a good skill.
You need to be prompting your new cloud. You need to be really excellent in prompting your cloud, and then you can Terraform it.
Yeah.
I also, you mentioned a couple of interesting things, that it's hard for a single person to know everything, how to, run a Java server or how to run Kubernetes and whatnot at the same time, to be an expert data scientist, etc. I think that discussion about, a more generalist type of person versus a more specialist, and what is the proper level of roles that you should have as a normal company when, starting up a data science team for building proper applications. But I add that as a coming topic.
I need to break now. Okay. 45 minutes in, we need to do a proper introduction.
Or AI.
Carl Thome. Carl Thome, come on.
I'm here again. Thank you.
Welcome back.
Thank you.
Do you want to do the introduction, Anders?
Let's just give some background. We were planning to have the awesome Bob Sturm here today, but he got a cold.
That was very nice.
Yes, and you know him well as well.
Yeah.
And he's an awesome person, of course, with, I think, a lot of similar interests as you have.
I would say I have similar interests as he does, because he's my idol, kind of. But yes.
Okay. Whoever was influenced by who, but at least he's older. And
So he's on your Nestor radar.
Yeah, I have a poster of him in my
I knew that. But the scary thing is for what purpose? And is the poster in the toilet or not?
No.
Let's not go there.
No, but he's really cool.
Anyway, it's awesome to have you here again, Carl Thome.
Thank you.
And I'm really eager to hear more about what's happened since the last time you were here. But before we go there, perhaps you can give a quick recap, and not going through the full background or not, but just give a quick background. Who is Carl Thome?
All right.
Let's start a little bit very fast from the beginning, but then I want to hear from your project that you were about to commit in Epidemic Sound.
Yeah, cool. Okay, so I've been doing a lot of machine learning engineering, and I come from the computer science perspective as like a software engineering mindset, programming stuff, studied a lot of that stuff. So not from physics like many machine learning people. So I represent the more it has to work to be meaningful crowd, which is a good after work topic.
Could we call that the Elon Musk approach, to make it work for us?
I'm hesitant to compare or be compared to him, maybe. I don't know, maybe. But it's nice
it's an interesting topic.
But in like an engineering or a science world, I'm an engineer who pretends to be a scientist rather than the opposite. So I'm really mostly satisfied if my model actually does work, like in terms of getting value to some end user of the thing. That's the best feeling. But then also I've been focusing on music a lot. So music informatics particularly, which could be machine listening, analyzing what is the signal. Does it sound like a rock song or a pop song? Or is it this pitch, or what is the melody, or which song is it?
And you were one of our first guests here. In one, I think
2 years ago or something.
First season. Yeah. So if anyone is interested when we go deep on some of these ideas around sound or music informatics, I think we did a lot of cool discussions there.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot of stuff there. But this has been moving a lot since 2 years. So I mentioned like analysis is cool, music informatics, understanding, making computers that listen to music like humans kind of understand music would be very useful.
We talked about that.
Yeah, but then there's also this other side of maybe like synthesis, or saying, why not have machines that produce sounds that sounds good? Makes me happy to listen to this.
Going from perception to generation in some way.
Yeah,
music generation.
And now we're seeing like both of, because historically like the analysis thing has been mostly focused on, because I guess it's easier to know if it's working, better metrics, you know what you kind of want, so you have an objective ground truth kind of. Synthesis is really fluffy, like does it sound good to you? I guess I will ask 10,000 people, that sounds rough to do.
And someone likes growling and someone
it's different tastes, what does it even mean, right? So, but we're seeing a lot of movement in that area of saying, maybe these machine learning models can actually spit out pretty useful pictures, right? So DALL-E 2 being the obvious example. And I don't know how to say vatten på min kvarn in English, but it's very satisfying to see this kind of dumb model go brr approach, which is like, okay, you can scale this silly maximum likelihood approach and do small iterative gradient descent steps, and the end result almost feels magical, which is, it's kind of, I think I've said that like 5 years ago. Like I think like if you do this but a lot, it will be good, be pretty cool.
So the model and data scaling that we've seen in the last couple of years,
it's very nice.
It's nice, but and I agree, I must say, but I'm trying to find the other, what's the alternative to it. So I mean,
so domain expertise, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Problem understanding things. Do we need to understand a problem to make a good enough solution for it that is useful? And I mean, the computer person in me goes like, nice that I don't need to be smart to make useful things.
And just to elaborate more and speak, for example, about GPT-3 or the GPT model.
Which is a very good example of,
exactly.
Dumb thing go.
Exactly, you know where I'm going with this.
But it's,
So just being able to, I mean, it has a very simple setup. It's just predicting the next word. That's the only thing it's doing. So no human has said anything more than, just build a model that is super big and has huge amount of data and lets it do a very, very simplistic, stupid thing, which is just what is the next word. And surprisingly from that, by just scaling it up, as you say, it's able to do like thousands of different tasks in one single model.
Yep.
They're all performing rather poorly, I would say.
Sure.
But they can perform a large number of tasks, and they're certainly moving in the direction of a more general approach to AI, where that model can do so many things.
Yep.
And it's kind of strange in some way. It's strange. I mean, isn't it strange that scaling works? You don't think
so?
No,
because okay, so statistical co-occurrence in temporal proximity or locally in the text. Like there's structure to data, and just like, now we have a method of extracting that structure and exploiting that inherent structure. And that seemed to work pretty well. So I guess the lesson is kind of like the bitter lesson here is that a lot of English text is kind of self-similar. And it just happened to be that most of the next tokens are easy-ish to guess, good enough such that it's a useful thing. And then whether this is intelligent or like AI or whatever, I care so little about that. It's like it's really cool and really useful, and I think people consistently underestimate how these technologies, just like these simple optimizations and scaling and making this thing available to everyone. I think people have really underestimated how useful that would be.
But and in fundamental, going into music, why wouldn't that work for music?
It will.
Because when we know how you compose and harmonies, and if you train, what are you doing? What sounds like the logical next choice to the ear from where I'm going here? And Paul McCartney is brilliant in finding where we want to go.
Then let's add him to the training set.
Exactly.
Which is, I mean, there's intellectual property problems here and ethics involved that are very scary and problematic. But in terms of like the technology, these things probably will just work, and people will be annoyed that these things work, and then we will say that's not AI, and then I will say okay,
it's not
that's
intelligent.
fine. You can shift the goalpost to something new then and say like it has to have symbolic reasoning or something. Cool, that's really cool. It's cool that people do that.
Is it?
Yeah, I mean it's nice that people think about the next step after we kind of have diminishing returns in this, because I guess like you can 10x the number of examples and you can maybe like 100x it, but I could imagine this saturating at some point, where it's like now we have these excellent English-speaking devices, and they just work. Okay, but then what's the next thing for us to build.
So, but it's important what you're highlighting here. You don't really care is this intelligent or not. I don't give a fuck.
That's your words, but okay, yeah.
But the thing, does it work?
Is it useful?
Is it useful?
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah, and it is very cool.
But is GPT-3 useful today?
Yes.
Give an example.
Okay, so like just for fun, but I've been having with friends over, sitting at home playing guitar and then prompting GPT-3 with chords for a metal song about ice cream, and you tab, and then you get the chords and the lyrics, so and then we just play around with it. So it's an inspirational thing, right? It gives you inspiration.
Artistic use cases.
Yes.
Yeah. What do you think for company, use cases? A company that wants to get started in AI, what should they invest in? Should they invest in a large language model, or should they invest in other types of AI?
So I guess you should do both, right? You take a large language model or some good representation to start from, as in a foundation model, and then you have well-defined tasks with well-defined test sets on top of those as a feature set, right? So I'm a bit of this representation learning a religious person almost, but it feels like a very good and strong baseline if you're a company and you don't really care about getting the best model, you want a good enough model fast.
Could we just linger on this a bit longer? Say, what are the pros and cons with these huge models that are, billions of parameters in size? And I think you mentioned a number of pros here. One, of course, is that they are surprisingly generic or general in
somehow. Seems like
the tasks they can perform. They are good for artistic use cases and I'm sure a lot of other stuff as well. If we were to linger on some cons, one con would be you can't run it on your own machines, right?
Sure.
You can't train it on your own data. So that means you can't fine-tune it to your use cases. Right?
If you specifically mean GPT-3, that's true.
Or large language models in general.
But there are, the approach.
The prompt engineering could potentially be a case that you can fine-tune without, in zero-shot way, right?
Or I guess you could just, the resulting activations that you could use as features, they're not so big. So you could have a data store where we have pre-computed embeddings for all our items with this really chunky model that we have licensed. But then we derive useful tasks on top of these features. And I think people will find that using that as a foundation model approach will give you better bang for the buck. Even though it will always maybe be worse in the final margins of accuracy of tasks, you might have a better solution with a bespoke model.
Let's be concrete here. Let's take one example. What would it be? Text similarity or something? Or image or audio similarity? Text similarity. Okay, you want to have a way to do semantic search in text, for example.
Yep.
And then you have some embeddings for sentences or whatnot. You index them, and then you can put in whatever kind of natural language piece of sentence or text, and then you can find where in all the data I have, where is potentially a similar piece of text.
Yep.
Can you use GPT-3 for that in some way?
I guess. Why not? I guess you would take some embedding activation and use that as the representation for some raw text, I guess. I don't know. NLP isn't necessarily my field either, so I'm not an expert.
Let's go audio instead.
But in audio we see this, by the way. So there are even kind of popular GitHub models that says that kind of claim that use our representation for your audio signal and you will make a pretty good model with just a simple linear model on the end. And which is nice because those are fast to train.
But that's a pre-trained normal model that they can run on your own machine at least.
Yeah, sure. But I could imagine them in the future if the field was bigger. I could imagine some OpenAI thing saying, we have this really chunky audio representation model that requires a huge amount of compute or something, and that would then be a lot even more useful. This is the aspect that is maybe the problem with foundation models, that they're kind of easy to lock in, and especially if you think about clip. It might be that the future now is that you're going to see big tech giants licensing vector spaces, which will sound pretty weird. This is the clip space. You have to pay royalties to be in it. I'm like, what?
But let's unpack this a little bit now, because you now referenced to the word foundation model 3 or 4 times. And foundation models is it's a paper from, I guess, Facebook, who's sort of, and someone else who's looking at an architecture where they think the future is all about foundation models, like super huge general models that you have as a foundation model. And in some ways, you use that as part of your storyline. But then I hear in between the lines, your argument is that that's the base where you then do your narrow modeling or contextualization on top at home.
Yes.
So instead of doing everything narrow, you're trying to sort out what's the hybrid here between foundation model and what you need to do to get it home to your particular use case? Or
it's like I'm saying feature reuse is probably pretty effective, and then I mean development hours.
What do you mean with feature?
So having a foundation model or something. So if you have a set of 10 teams doing different product features built on some data-driven tuning thingy, and you have a strong notion of users and maybe items or something, and all of these teams invent their own such representation, that feels like you now 10x'd the development cost of saying, we will all start from scratch and make a good understanding of how our users are in our domain. But maybe we should centralize that. So you could all reuse our shared features about our items, let's say a Spotify track or something.
That's the foundation model.
In this sense, it would be that, right? So it's like and going from no assumptions to your final objective feels like it's, at least theoretically, should always be better, but maybe not in a tractable amount of time or money. So is it worth it to make that we will start from scratch every time, or no, let's just start from a good enough. So
bespoke end to end from A to Z should be always
I could imagine that being true.
But costly. Yes. So can we start from a foundation and get us 50% and then start tuning and tweaking
or find out that was good enough. Oh, good. Then we do something else.
But there is a big difference here, I think. I think most agree that you want to minimize the times you start model training from scratch, and at least start at some pre-trained, potentially foundational model that you can use. But then being able to fine-tune it is a very powerful thing to be able to do.
Yeah.
And there is a difference between a pre-trained model like BERT or whatnot, or Wave to Vec or Whisper now, or whatever. Have you tried Whisper, by the way?
Not yet.
Okay. Anyway, and compared to that to the super big foundational models that you can't train yourself, that you can't even access.
You can only license. You get what do you get? You get an API
that you can't even access yourself. That is a big difference, I would say.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure.
It's going to be a bit of a battlefield between companies, and companies will want to own those models.
Yes.
And that's going to be a bit very annoying, probably.
Yeah.
We're already kind of seeing it happening. But I guess I'm thinking maybe not to go stability AI on the thing, but it's interesting to say maybe humanity has a shared representation of all of the modalities. Maybe that's something that we even mandate, that no, you have to share it. You can't sit on these forward passes and these weights. It's not legally reasonable. Humanity has a shared notion of how audio is perceived or something. And then everyone should be able to run things through that. Similar to other regulated markets.
Let's keep on the topic here, because I think everyone agrees that not starting from scratch every time to train something is something that's really useful and something that we need to do going forward. The big problem, at least that I have, is if we think about the objective that OpenAI has or DeepMind has, which they clearly state, of course, is to build general AI.
Yeah.
And then thinking about, now a company that has no AI today wants to get started, or perhaps they have even started and want to just think, how can we make sure that we are using the latest type of AI technologies for my company? I am a bit annoyed with seeing so many newspapers, popularized magazines, not scientific ones, but still other ones, really, hyping the GPTs of the world. Stability, I think, is actually good, but Dalia, at least, in a similar fashion, and that obviously they are so easy to understand. They generate text. They generate videos or images, and it's so easy to understand, and you can be amazed by how powerful that is.
Sure.
Even if you can run Stability AI, which you can, of course, in your own even laptop, the question is then, what's the value for a company? Should you be using generative models in that way, or is there other models that are more beneficial for companies to get started in AI?
Okay.
Is generative models the first thing you should try?
Generative models, as in like they learn a probability distribution they can sample from, or do you mean like that the output is some human media that you can?
More the latter.
Okay. No, that's not necessarily so interesting. I think like this just strategically, it's interesting to say
it's fun and sexy and super. I mean, we play.
The specific tasks that they hype are probably not super interesting. Like, but you're saying like if you do these kind of shared models for many tasks, you get a lot of good things for free, right? If you improve the centralized representation in your company, then you might improve on many different tasks.
No question about that, but that's not generative in that way.
Okay, maybe not. But
it's just pre-trained, foundational models in general. But you can train yourself.
Yeah, but so what is then? What's your beef?
My beef is that there is so much hype on these very sexy, easy to understand, easy to visualize type of models.
Is that so weird though? Like
no, it's not weird.
Popular science is
it's popular science, but unfortunately that can cause companies to invest in the wrong things.
Okay. Yeah.
And it can get EU funding or Swedish government funding spent on things that may not be the best use of that funding.
Sure.
And we've seen that happen.
Yeah, no, that's maybe the backside of these specific tasks that are very attractive to end users. Sure. DALL-E 2. I don't know. Supposedly I'm a techno optimist. I've been called that. I don't think this. It's a bit of a battlefield. Different companies want to flag plant and own the thing because you see the money and you can always see it in their eyes, and they're gonna like, oh, you need to license our hidden solid API to even be competitive or something. And then we're gonna hog all of the data into silos, and it's gonna be a bit of a rough next 10 years. I don't know. I think maybe companies should at least start to think in terms of like, we should be on this representation train of having really good representations for our domain.
Yes.
And such that they can be used.
I think, one simple, application of AI that is one of the most valuable one I can think of, and I think also in Epidemic they are using this specifically, and I've seen so many other companies from the time at Baltar and other times, which is similarity. It can be similarity in text, in images, in audio, music, and whatever.
Really good
and
task.
It's surprisingly useful.
Yep.
It's not sexy. I mean, it's just similarity.
I think it's quite. Wow, okay. So now you're saying like, because it doesn't produce, it only produces a scalar quantity of like how close is this?
Yeah, just an embedding.
And that's okay. I still maybe I'm old then. I think that's still cool.
Yes, I do as well. But I think you wouldn't see a newspaper article written about that.
All right. So what's happened in the last 2 years or so is that they spit out an image or they spit out a human readable text.
Yes.
They get a lot of publications about them. Yeah, sure. And those are not necessarily the tasks that I want to use these features for.
It's not what's going to accelerate the use of our society.
No, probably not. But
and it's probably going to cause a lot of abuse as well in our society.
But okay, so this depends on what you think people will use DALL-E 2 for, or such a system. It could be each company has their own, or everyone licenses one, or whatever. But the idea of saying I give you a little bit of a text and I get a plausible image that is kind of semantically good enough, that could be used for like generating game assets as a game designer.
Of course, there are
like it speeds up your workflow.
Sure.
Similar to like it, and in a way, this is a similarity search.
If we think King or something, I mean, they have generative models and they generate landscapes, and in that way they produce and build and develop new games so much faster.
Could you imagine like a few $1 trillion of money in that?
It is, but they do that without using they would never use DALL-E, I don't think.
Why not?
I don't.
Too hard to control.
I may be wrong, but I think they have other ways to do that, and they need to train it themselves. They need to fine tune it for their specific use cases, and then potentially, I could be wrong, is the fine tuning of those type of models not as efficient as actually training on the huge amount of data.
Let's support a very much more analog business or industry, the ad agency business. So how fast, I have a T-shirt from Data Science Hopi Data Science Open. Super cool picture on the front end. that sort of fits perfectly with this sort of mood of the, art directing is
but
great.
Wouldn't you want to be able to control the generation to actually produce the type of ads that you're interested in?
No, but so the bottom line then is with right enough prompting, Robert Luciani, who's not an art director, could basically sort out a very cool picture to put on the T-shirt. Then he adds his own sort of copy on top of it.
It's an ingredient somehow.
Yeah, but the difference is, okay, I need to buy this. I need to go and buy the photo from StockX. I need to go and shoot the picture, or I need to have an artist drawing the picture. And here I basically, because I can't find in StockX exactly the right picture. It's quite short distance to be have an excellent prompter in an ad agency who really knows how to squeeze out cool images for an ad.
It's
that's not far. It's not far.
Not at all. And it's this is the new dystopia then, I guess, that we're going to accidentally make everyone who did this unemployed.
Exactly.
By this, and it works good enough. I don't need to hire a human to do anything. Who knows? And then we also have this problem that how these systems have been built is by kind of stealing existing people's work.
That's true.
And then just kind of compressing it down to some kind of smart
But the stealing
model.
is hard to manage now because
Very hard.
Very hard. It's in the neural network by now.
Yeah, but and is this something that we should work on? I'm a bit don't know.
I mean, it's no question that all the generative models will cause and enable a lot of people to do things that they otherwise cannot do, including generating music.
Yeah, that's probably a matter of time, I think.
But
or
seriously,
being able to generate ads, being able to generate text or audio or images in different ways. So in that way, it will democratize perhaps a skill that previously were locked into a few selected set of people.
Yeah. So
which could be good or bad, depending on how you see it.
Yeah, so being a skilled musician will not be as valued somehow accidentally.
Or they will move into another type of skill that means that they can be more efficient potentially.
But I had this conversation with Robert before, joking about when do we see prompting as art, and when do we understand prompting as the new brush?
Yep.
What's the difference?
Yeah,
we started with the pencils, then someone did airbrushing in the
and then some e-ink tablets with some iPad,
and now we're doing.
That's not real art. When I was little, I did it by hand. And
I played with kottar.
They were just. Maybe we are just old, boring people, and then the 12-year-olds of today that do TikToks, they will have really, really exciting artwork with these systems.
Prompting.
Yeah. Yes, and it will just be a natural part of everything.
So it's a new type of brush.
Perhaps, and I hope that's the optimistic take on this, right? And I hope that's the one we're heading towards. It could also be that we made a big oops now, all of us.
But we kind of derailed this story on Carl,
whatever. But it's like musicians, right? Will they be around in 10 years? Will that be a thing?
For sure, but
why? Maybe.
For sure. But the real question is, on what abstraction level will you work as a musician?
Because most of the work will be done a lot maybe quicker and more dialogue with your computer and stuff. And that's I'm all
creativity and creation will always be around because it's part of human. I think what sets us apart.
It's going to be more important to have good artistic sensibilities than mechanically very good fingers for playing a violin or something.
So we're
kind of shifting from musicianship to artistry somehow a bit, making that more important, that less important.
Technique is less important.
Perhaps.
Then you have other techniques. So maybe your technique has now moved into a meta space.
Yeah.
What is technique, right? The technique
being
is
good at prompting them.
Exactly.
Yeah, but you already see this a bit in people's generations on Twitter and stuff, that some people have kind of consistently made really cool looking things by figuring out something like intuition. I add this comma, high resolution comma something words, and there's tricks, and people are pretty good at that, to making things into an art. But yeah, it's a bit dystopic to think that maybe we accidentally made art redundant.
I don't think you can make it. Redundant.
No, probably not.
But,
and it's also.
But what is art then? Is the core question.
You're gonna have.
How do you perform it?
So in 5 years, when we make this with music and maybe even video, we will have like labels on a CD, which says like this was 100% human made. ecologically produced.
Ecologically produced.
And then people will buy it.
Produced, perhaps.
I will buy ecologically produced music for sure.
Yeah. That's sad.
I guess one example of this is the old NSynth from Google, where they basically, if I remember correctly, had like they had a square, and you can like put your finger or pen or something on it, and in that way choose to produce different type of
timbre,
music,
tone quality.
It's like a latent space, I guess, in this.
Yeah,
and you move it around, and it produces.
So you
music.
choose the melody, but with that one, you could change the tone quality between known instrument classes.
Yeah.
So you get a mix of like a 50% flute, a 50% whistle.
And I can be an expert like piano player or guitar or violin or whatever by just moving a pencil on a small square.
Something like that. Yeah.
How long ago?
This is 2016 or something.
Yes,
but it didn't cover performance. And one of the big aspects of why a piano sounds like a piano is also which pitches or melodies come in. Because you have 10 fingers or something. But that one only really covered timbre, as it's called, the tone. But it's just a matter of time until you get all of these things, right? So I take my guitar recording and make it sound like an actually really plausible piano take of the same thing. Click. And that's feels like it's like next year.
And then you have the dimensions of timbre, and what else? What do you need to add to make it?
So performance. Music performance, right? Like accentuations and timings and like being a bit behind or before in the beat and small things. Like these are the things.
Technique of guitar versus technique of piano, performance of piano.
They are slightly different. Like I think you could almost guess from a MIDI file if it was created with a keyboard or from someone trying to mimic a guitar. Like you could almost guess it in the start and stop times of notes. But,
so what's your guess then? Will there be musicians around in 10 years? Or will they have been replaced by AI and everyone is just, not listening to any kind of artist on, I guess, in Spotify in 10 years? Or they're just going to press the button saying, this is just generate music now, personalized for me. It's not produced by any single human.
I mean, imagine,
what do you think?
I don't think that's not out of scope anymore. That could actually happen. Yeah.
But
we're kind of like on Netflix, right? Because I'm watching a Netflix show that's made for me. No one's ever seen it.
Yes,
it's excellent.
Exactly.
But it's an interesting point here. You have a new price point. You have free Spotify, which is artificially generated according to your tastes, or you have
not ecologically produced,
and not ecologically produced, and then you have premium, which is also including ecological music from real musicians. Why not?
Yeah. I mean,
I think
we can do both.
Ecological is a wrong term. I think biological would be.
But it's funny.
Machine can
but
be.
I know the pun is ecological because it's like what's on the milk carton today.
Yeah, exactly.
That's the joke. Biologically produced would be more correct, but it has an echo.
It's fun because it's not necessarily even a joke. It's an interesting thought, and I just have to say I stole that thought from Bob Sturm, who should have been here. Yeah, it's a really good thought. I don't know where he stole it from, but it's a good thought.
About the ecology thing?
No, it's having maybe ingredient annotations on artwork.
Yes.
Like this was made by an actual human. Oh, okay. Something like that.
To get really boring, I mean, I think in the upcoming AI Act now being developed in EU, they have to state in whatever service you have if there is any AI component in it. So it actually is.
Yeah, okay, we're already kind of there.
You're there.
Yeah. No. Yeah. That's going to be innehållsförteckning, right?
Innehållsförteckning
in English.
In declaration of content.
I guess.
Yeah. I guess.
Yeah, they don't really have that, I guess.
But I guess they need to specify was this model produced by this company, and they have these kind of biases.
It's going to get weird.
Yeah, you know how you have it on food now, and you say, "Oh, what is all these artificial ingredients?"
It's going to be AI.
It's going to be the same. It's going to be the same.
Yeah, I mean, so
E802, but AI 802.
Yeah, but I guess what we are assuming now is that people will actually care about how things were produced. We do care about how food was produced for health reasons, but for consuming entertainment or art, would we care about how it was made? And I guess we feel yes. I care about how it was made.
But this joke,
the reason for it.
But this joke is not far-fetched because you have a couple of different artificial ingredients in this, and they are sötningsmedel, preservatives, and they are then stated like E200T.
Yep.
Imagine now we have foundation models.
Yep.
So now we have foundation model F Facebook 203.
Yep.
Huh?
Yeah, definitely.
Definitely not so far-fetched if you really think about it.
Exactly. I don't think it necessarily is a joke. I think it could happen. And because we are probably interested in how the art was made somehow, which is a weird topic, but it's like, why do we care about it feeling authentic? It has to be, I have to have a perception of a song being authentic or made with heart or something for me to enjoy it. Even if it would sound exactly as good or the same with just being made in a factory by people that couldn't care less, or even now a machine that just kind of spit it out on a button, either or, somehow that kind of takes away from my enjoyment of the piece of content.
But I must then argue, depending on what mood I am in, sometimes I just want to, I'm here for the beat, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
And then sometimes I'm like, do you know what? I want to listen to B.B. King authentic guitars play, and I'm in the mood to enjoy the art, the artistry. And sometimes
so there's room for both.
I think it's room for both, and then you can, because if you go the other way, I think Swedish House Mafia is super great, fantastic musicians. I really think they are fantastic musicians. But do they care about them as the technicians? And then I listen quite a bit to John Mayer. For me, it's two different moods and things I'm after.
Yeah.
And I think there's room for both.
But if you knew that you listened to a song and then you heard like, the person who made it absolutely didn't care about how it sounded, they just wanted to make money on it or something, would that maybe hurt your sentiment towards that song?
It depends on the mood.
It's like, it's still good.
If I'm brutal, I would put, it's not true, but I could put Swedish House Mafia, they want to rock a house. Yep. They don't really care as long as it rocks the house.
Sure.
Making money, maybe?
I love AC/DC, so that's fine. Right?
Yeah,
like,
even,
we don't care. We have one song, but it's rock,
well,
so whatever.
If I take the example, right, John Mayer, in one way had made some weird choices career-wise, lately. Because he decided, do I want to make music that's going to sell, or do I want to make music that is meaningful to me?
Somehow, yeah.
And then I listen to his latest albums, and sometimes I love his earlier works because it's more accessible. Yep. And now I'm listening a lot to his new work, and I know he's gone from mainstream to narrow, and I kind of enjoy it. Yep. But is one better or the worse? I don't know. I don't think so.
No,
I think there's room for both.
And this has been true for most things, right? It's like, movies come out, and now we won't make books anymore. That wasn't true. We still make books. I guess we make more books now than then. So old forms of expression kind of survive newer forms. It's possible that this is just like one more step in this same pattern of saying human-made rock song guitarist thing. It's always going to be quite nice. But 90% of the background music for TV shows might be good enough with a generated button press, and it's fine because it's more of an ingredient in a thing than the end result. And
I think it's a logical reasoning you're having right now.
Thank you.
But what I mean is like we are just following a macro trend.
Yeah, maybe this is
compared to normal. Or
but
what?
I have said this before, and people have said entirely the opposite. Like, no, this is different because we've never had so much speed and data such that we can get to a level of quality that is unprecedented. With new AI models making stuff, generating stuff, that this might be a different paradigm shift somehow. Like I still feel like, it's just one more of we always don't like the new thing, and it's gonna fit into the puzzle.
I think both points of view is valid, but how will the other point affect the other one? I don't think it goes away.
No.
I think there's the trend that you're describing, that it's a new thing and it happens, but it didn't kill the old one.
Yep.
I think that is a truth that we can see. But
so.
how will it be affected by an increasing acceleration? Maybe it will. I don't know.
Yep.
Time is flying away here, and we haven't even covered, the question on what happened in Epidemic since you last was here.
Yeah.
Could we move quickly in that? And we have so many other topics here, so perhaps trying to be a bit brief here.
Yeah, sorry. It's nice to...
topics here.
Good fun, man.
Yeah,
We're having fun.
Yeah.
Okay. So, cool. What's happened in Epidemic since?
So a lot of movement. Like, I think 2 years ago or something when I was here, we talked about... you asked, like, what's next? And I said, we're going to try to make a similarity search. That is really good. And the thing is, then we did that. And me and Sebastian and Oscar worked on it a lot, and it kind of got launched. I think it's a very good similarity search in terms of like this music content sounds a bit like this one. And then what's next after that, and we'll see. But I imagine it being to adapt content, like the tracks, the music tracks or sound effects, to the video storyteller's needs, like in making longer or shorter versions of the exact same verse, or maybe making crossovers between tracks that blend together in a meaningful way. And I guess the buzzword here would be diffusion models, right? Or maybe making slight variations of an existing sound effect, such that it's novel and only in your story, instead of like, it's the same Wilhelm scream all over. It's a funny joke, but maybe I could make a variation of it so it's only from my piece of content.
And not copyrighted?
Yeah. So like there's interesting aspects to that, which makes, I mean, that's one aspect. The other aspect is like, I think as a creator, you would like a thing better if it's yours. If you just like, I did a thing and now it's mine. This sound was made by me instead of...
But if I just take one of your songs, Carl Thome, on Spotify, and I just take it down and I tweak the button a bit to make it more like mine.
Sure.
And then I claim it's mine. Wouldn't you be upset?
Depends on how much you did, right? If you just,
I just turn the button. That's
let's say you take it and you just like flip the waveforms. You do like a 180 phase. Like it's the most dissimilar as it can be by definition. But maybe. It sounds extremely similar.
I'm gonna give you a problem.
Yeah.
That as an old, I used to. I don't have an Epidemic Sound account right now. I had it for several years, and I had one particular thing I wanted that I couldn't get. I don't know if you mentioned this, but I think it's very typical that for your purpose, you're looking and finding different... I was going through a lot of different things because I wanted, for instance, an intro to a podcast.
Yep.
Okay. And then I had, I really want my podcast intro to be smart, so it cannot be 30 seconds. It needs to be 8 seconds.
Yeah.
And then I tried to find, this is the coolest song, but it's 30 seconds or 40 seconds. So I want to be able to prompt to Epidemic Sound that, please, this track, that has the vibe I want. It's that track, but I want it for an intro purpose, and I want it to be 2 seconds, 5 seconds, 20 seconds. That would be the killer app for me.
So it sounds like you're talking about our roadmap now, which is good.
So you're
how long until that will be?
Isn't that cool?
True.
Yeah, that's a really good idea. I think those things. Yeah, how long? It is unknown. Like there's Stability AI is working on doing this for music and audio, especially musical audio. And it's like, I want to give you a little bit of a text and just when it should sound like music. To me, it mostly sounds still like someone is flipping between radio channels. It's like, that's that song, and this is that known song, and you're just kind of fading between them.
I think what you are doing with Epidemic Sound, where you can search and you find the mood and genre, and then when you found it, then you want to frame the use of it. I think that's different.
But I would like to make it such obvious user experience that you say, I have this video clip. I have an example of a song that I like, spacebar. And now you got what you wanted.
Okay.
So it's direct fits the track, it's synced, it has the right length, and you kind of enjoy the vibe of it. Or maybe you want a little tweak, so you click on another space bar and you get it tweaked or something. You get some control here. It's important that you feel that you're in that you have agency in how it fits together. I think that it's not an autonomous machine is not so nice. But to get to this workflow where you just kind of that's not more like this. Okay, now this is good. This I'll take.
But I think there is a power in Epidemic Sound where you basically say, I don't really know what I want. I will browse, and now I'm in an exploration mode in Epidemic Sound for one day. And then I do a shortlist for myself, and then I come to this example. So the exploration.
Some happy accidents are nice to encourage, right?
So the exploration phase to have that accelerated is also good.
Yep.
So the two stages: exploration to I don't even know what I need. Now I know when I've heard about it.
Yep. No.
Then you come to the second stage. What you
absolutely. So the browsing or the discovery phase or serendipity is very important to be mindful of.
Yes.
Yep. But yeah, these are precisely kind of the ideas that I would like now to explore concretely and trying to make this actually work with machine learning models. Because I guess next year or next year, this might not be so foreign anymore.
No.
Progress has been a little bit I think I felt early that DALL-E 2 or something like that will work, that will happen. But I did not guess that it would happen so quick.
Could we go a bit more technical?
Yeah, please.
Text has been around for quite some time. Images came later for generative models.
No.
Music, not so much yet.
Yeah.
Why is music harder than text and images?
Is it? Because I guess it's fewer people working on it.
Do you think that's the only reason?
I have a hard time finding a good justification for why that type of signal would be
what
intrinsically.
What about the high frequency problem?
Okay, so it's like there's a lot of sample points for a very short amount of perceived content and stuff, and while text is very kind of in that sense dense, but text also has a lot of different tokens, and on an amplitude scale you get like there's 255 different ones, so it's a bit of a give and take. No, I really have a hard time finding a solid reason for like that this cannot work.
Yeah, no, absolutely, but it's still,
it happened to be for text.
So it could be, as you say, it's a matter of interest and what people are working mostly.
That's my hunch.
Yeah. Is it thousands of people working on this problem and 200 or 100 on this people? It has an
something
impact.
like that. Like it's just a smaller area with less development spent on it. I think is like one of the major aspects of it.
Could it be also some more ethical reasons that if we actually are able to do this, it could actually displace a lot of people potentially? Or
arguably, artistic paintings and drawings are exactly as sensitive as audio, music stuff.
I don't
so
see
no, I would like to say like, oh no, my thing is way harder and way cooler and it cannot be generated, but it doesn't feel like that's true. It feels like more like, no, this will probably pop up, and then everyone will go like, huh. And then we will shift the goalpost and say that's not actually what we meant, and for some reason.
Is there, the transformer is taking over, space after space, and of course it's moving into images as well, and they tokenize images, and in that way, being able to move into some larger pieces of objects that you can, treat as tokens, and then you can suddenly work in the pixel space.
Yep.
Do you think that will be the proper way forward for music?
Perhaps,
as well?
right? Because one of the recent research publications was called AIAW, as in audio language model, which is kind of precisely this idea of like we want long-term structure, like verse, chorus, verse, same verse, not another verse. But we also want the short-term, this dense thing, like there's a lot of samples here per second of content. So then they do a transformer on embeddings, and the embeddings come from autoencoder, so to speak, but rather like a audio compression algorithm. And so that seems, and that's like one of the first maybe examples where you listen to some piano continuations and it's like, wow, that's actually musically kind of coherent for once, because a lot of these effects are like radio switching channels, but this one sounded quite good. And that's a transformers-based idea.
And audio LM, I don't remember exactly, but that could generate music, right?
Yeah, or continue. I guess you see it and yes.
So what we're talking about,
but you get stuff to listen to.
So you have a prompt of music and it continues.
Yeah, I think that's
prompt.
the setup. Yeah.
Yes.
So I can follow. Are we talking about transformers and its relevance to music?
Yeah, the Optimus Prime and stuff. No. Yeah, but the structure of that is nice. It's like we might not know which time step should influence this time step. It might be the previous one or the previous one that is the most influential on what I will guess next, right?
Yeah. So
this pairwise distances or self-attention is quite...
So 1 microsecond for listeners who are not into the worlds of transformers more than Optimus Prime.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're talking about transformers revolutionizing NLP language and now also pictures. And what is transformers, and what is then we are talking about application of transformers to music?
Exactly.
Or sound.
Yeah. So the best explanation I've heard of this is this geometric deep learning formalism that I really think is amazingly spot on, even though it goes a bit over my head. But like there's some there are RNNs, there's CNNs, and there's these transformers, and they do stuff, but they're trained. Okay, so there's some objective here. There's some gradient descent, backprop. They're very similar, but also very dissimilar. What is the dissimilarity between these particular different families of models, right? There's other entirely different models as well, right? But we don't necessarily think about them anymore. We think about backproppable gradient descent things. And then there's these families. How are they different? So in geometric deep learning, you get a very nice algebraic formulation for this is particularly that signature and this is particularly that signature. And that they kind of get a shared framework for how to think about these things. And so what you're saying, if you want to use a transformer, you're kind of implicitly saying, I have a problem where I don't know if the order matters, but I think that past things or future things should affect my current thing. But I don't know in which direction. If you have an RNN, you're saying kind of like, I have an enforced left to right direction, that the current thing should only care about the just previous thing.
Or it could go both sides. Like
it could, so you could reverse the sequence pattern. So but you have an immediate neighbor.
Yes.
And if you have a CNN, you have kind of a similar idea of like local neighborhood matters more than far away.
So this is super important. So let me do these sort of idiotic checks in between.
Yes.
So basically, what we are really trying to understand now is we have different types of business problem, visual, audio, and they have a fundamental underlying core mathematical problem.
There's some invariances you want to exploit.
And here now we are getting to different classes of models that are typically relevant for different nuances.
No, the same one is applying for all of them.
Yeah, the same toolbox. There's Lego blocks in the toolbox. The toolbox we call, I guess, backprop or something.
Okay, so because I think you are so deep into the into the maze here, and there is some magic going on here that is we are almost unpacking it to the right level that the business person can understand this.
There are good words for this. So the business person would maybe need to learn the phrase inductive bias or something, which is a bit fluffy. But in your problem, you have certain things that in your input can change the outcome, but you also have certain changes in your input that absolutely cannot change the outcome. And it would be very nice if you chose a model that doesn't even see in changes that don't matter. And for example, I guess it could be like, we're going to do credit default or something like loaning things. Maybe we know that it doesn't matter what, let's say gender you have. Yeah. So let's not even have a model that could see that or something. Now that's a bit more of feature occlusion and fairness, but the same approach happens to like structure in your data. So in a given example, you might have certain patterns. A classic actually is this. You have a picture of a dog or a picture of a cat. You want to classify if it's a cat or a dog picture. Image classification, classic. You think up front that it does not matter if the dog is in the left side or the right side.
Exactly.
So that your model should not care about. If your model does care about where it actually is exactly, absolutely in pixel space, you will need to have examples of dogs all over the thing. But with a smart inductive bias, as in like a ComNet or whatever, you get this for free. You don't need examples of it being all over. So this translation invariance is built into the assumptions. It's basically kind of like this is domain knowledge or using domain expertise again, even though deep learning was supposed to not have that.
Biases included in the model itself.
So, and transformers have one of these very similar ideas that the different columns might all affect each other, but we don't know in which order.
I would describe it as, if we were to just dumb it down to like 4 different types of neural networks. One is feed-forward, the first one, the obvious one.
What do you use that
Fully
for?
connected.
What do you use?
All of these can be used for everything, I would argue. But some works better than others.
So this is where I'm trying to now go into the professor's brains and basically say, why do you want to go RNN here? Or why do you want to go CNN here?
It's an empirical field, by the way, so like because other people said we should.
Is that
we don't have a theory that drives the use for it. It's very much empirical.
Is it empirical?
So we have feed-forward, we have recurrent neural networks, we have convolutional neural networks, and self-attention transformer type.
Sure.
And feed-forward is basically very dumb, no biases introduced manually.
Minimal number of assumptions.
It's just connect every neuron to every other neuron.
Then what is the typical example where you would
wait a second.
Okay. Sorry. Go the whole way. Thank you.
And then we have recurrent neural network that actually has a state that looks at the previous state it had, and from that try to predict the next one.
Yeah, my favorite.
Is that your favorite?
And there are lots of variants of these. So RNNs,
it's good for audio.
LSTMs or GRUs or whatnot.
And I can't interrupt.
GRU can be very going there. So that's one type of it. It adds a bias saying there is some kind of ordering that is important, and that doesn't feed-forward has. So it's add a bias of order. Then we have convolution, and that looks more on a local window of things. So it adds a bias saying the spatial closeness matters. So by adding that bias and reducing the number of weights, it's much more efficient to work, for example, with images initially. But it still have the bias of it looks mainly at the local neighborhood. Then comes self-attention, and it actually reduces, I would argue, some of those biases, and it actually trains. Is it the next one that's important? Is it the closeness that is important? Or is it actually something else much further away that is important? So by having that, it learns by attending to itself what is the proper bias to have, so you don't need to manually add that type of bias. And that is surprisingly powerful without having to add the human bias into whatever works for some piece of data. That would be my...
but that's a really nice one. I like it a lot.
But it seems like the transformer is a little bit more... if I take the Marvel universe, it's more Iron Man than... one of the lesser cool. I mean, it sounds like it has more power. No, it sounds more powerful. It sounds like it's in the end it's going to outperform the other classes.
It is. It's doing that. So it's been described like this: that it's like a general purpose device that just kind of does most of the tasks. You give it enough data, and it just kind of goes really well. But I am okay. So what's the fifth one?
JEPA.
Okay.
No, Carl Thome. Carl.
No, okay. So should we just move to another question following this one that I think is super interesting? So that is more, what are the coming directions for AI models in terms of how they will evolve? And let me just start off with some ideas here. And we've obviously seen, with the large language models, foundational models that we've seen, pre-trained models that we have, that we need to have more multitask. And GPT is a good example of that. It can handle many different tasks by simply having a very, very simplistic objective. So going multitask is, I would argue, an obvious direction going forward.
Perhaps even multimodal.
That was my next one. So the next one is not only looking at many tasks, but actually having different modalities, such as text, images, audio. It could be code, could be whatever.
Intuitive.
There is no argument going to happen here, by the way.
I'm not. The question is coming shortly. Okay. So, multitask, multimodal, multilingual when it comes to text, of course. I mean, we've seen some recent models to, for example, take the Meta one with translation, not language left behind, or no language left behind. That could even show that even if you train on just one single pair of languages and train on all the data that exists for that, and then you add other languages and add into the same model multiple languages, it will benefit even when just evaluated for the single language. So adding more languages add power to it.
Because they are similar somehow in structure?
Yes,
somehow.
There is some similarity the model can find. So adding that extra data from other languages adds to the each of the languages itself. And the same with modality and tasks, I would say. I think thirdly, I like Jeff Dean quite a lot, one of the Google original AI people, and I think he's an AI director or something of Google.
Google Brain, right? Something.
Yes, I believe so. And he speaks of their pathway systems, and they have a number of things building on this, like the Palm model and whatnot. But what he also adds is the sparseness of models. So we today have a lot of dense models where you always use all the weights when doing a forward pass through the network. But then he says, why not have a super big model but make it much more efficient by saying for specific input, it just uses a part of the network. It's similar to the human brain, of course, when you think about a certain thought. If I want to do karaoke, I use one specific part of my brain. It's a very small one, because I'm not very efficient. But then if I think about other things, I use other parts of my brain. So thinking, I think, according to my understanding of his thoughts of the future, he says that this is really what AI is going in the future. We will have multitask, multimodal, multilingual, but also sparse models that will enable things, the inference to go much faster, training to go much faster, and we can, in that way, go from never having to train from scratch anymore. Just, if the model can handle 100 tasks, just adding the 101 task would be so much faster. Just a few examples, perhaps, of data, because it can find this kind of learnings that it had from other tasks, other modalities,
It feels very intuitive.
It does, right? You agree with this?
Yeah, I like the intuition of it. It's just that the idea has been around a long time, and it hasn't paid off yet. But I could imagine it being that this is the time to make it work.
I mean, we've seen it at least in some models.
But many people like the modularity of like, here's my visual module, and here's my audio module, and my text understanding module, and they collaborate to improve. It's a
perceiver thing, if you remember that.
Yeah, that's quite recent as well, right? Yeah. 2018 or I don't know.
I think 2 years ago.
But it's a very attractive idea. And then this also kind of feels a bit similar to the capsules networks thing of saying like object understanding and scene understanding could collaborate somehow, like embedding for that. And you see a sail, then you probably see a sailboat. Like, okay, it's very intuitive.
Yes, but and we also seen it like the no language left behind. But even the whisper thing, I think whisper could be fun to speak about because it's a really cool thing. I think also transformer based, of course.
So set it up. What is it?
So that's a model. Was it OpenAI? Yes, OpenAI. One of the first one. They actually are open about.
OpenAI's first open model. Boom.
Yeah.
Surprisingly. So that can do. That's a multitask model. It's trained on many different things. But one of the things it does well, the best is speech to text. So taking audio and transforming that into or transcribing that into text. But then it can do translation and it can do so many other things. And I believe they train it. They had this kind of weak training parts. That's the E part in the end of the whisper. That it's some kind of weak supervision that they use in that way. So. Dirty supervised things. And I think this is a typical example of something that is finding a benefit of training on different tasks and different, but just adding not super, perfect labeled data all the time, but still can be able to perform better than anything else in a surprisingly good way. But you hadn't tried Whisper yet, or
no? I haven't tried, but I've seen Karpathy's tweets about it, and it's fun. But
I think it's a very clear trend that we're moving towards these more generic,
So Gatto or something.
Okay, so
it's
Let's summarize. So we are talking about what are the next steps in models, right?
Coming 5 years.
We started with the 4 models that are the core fundaments. Let's see if I can remember. RNNs.
In this little this is one model.
Neural.
There's
exactly. in
artificial neural networks.
In the artificial neural network space.
There's
the
a lot of other stuff.
AI.
No, but there are a lot of other stuff.
Yeah. But here we had the 4s, and then we started to go forward. What's happening next? What's going here? And then Anders highlighted several different examples. And what can we say? Can we take it to some sort of principle or some summaries?
One claim in this spring or something is that scale is the thing. Scaling, just making whatever we have been doing, but make more of it, more examples and faster and bigger, and that we haven't really. So if you just make GPT-4 by maybe following the recipe and you spend money on it and time, you will get an improvement.
But so scale is one sort of insight here.
But maybe it's the insight. So that I'm saying like maybe what we have is pretty solid. Then people would argue like, no, but you need exploration and you need like self-play and you need something that finds its own tasks to make an AI.
Or symbolic reasoning.
And now I'm going to go out on a limb and quote Jan LeCun with the 2 guys in here who clearly highlights that, you know, we're on a trajectory now, but there are things missing in our trajectory that you need to add. And he's starting to do position papers on this, and he has a lot of different arguments where he says, look, we're going on a path, it will take us so far, but there is some sort of leapfrogging, or there's something else. Yeah. What is that? Or, you know,
so the cherry on the cake.
So scale is not enough.
No, probably not.
If you ask Jan LeCun.
I mean, it depends on what people's goals are. It's weird to work in machine learning where people have a lot of people have the goal of making a general intelligence that can do things, and other people are more like pattern recognition, cool UX kind of. And I'm more of the latter, I guess.
What do you mean pattern recognition?
Well, like making similarity search be a normal part of a website that really works well.
Right, so in a way, a very fundamental, simple problem that is super useful in so many different applications.
Yeah.
Is that what you are sort of?
Yeah, basically.
Why do we care about general AI?
I guess
care about solving business
kind
problems.
of what I'm thinking. Yeah, at least not now. It drives interesting research, and it's cool that people do it and stuff. And like in 10 years, we're going to have these AI ideas about things.
But do you want more research, more investment that drives usefulness here and now?
Yeah.
And what would that be?
Yeah, I guess I do. Yeah.
So if we were to stop this question, I think it's a great question, and I think also it's about the similarities that I think you have in your way of thinking compared to Elon Musk as well.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
oh no!
Again, we got.
Yeah.
Okay, so just let's describe it a bit more. One way to progress in AI would be, of course, to do basic research in different fields, and you don't really know what will be used for, but hopefully some of it will be used, and of course that's how science in some parts have been done for a long time.
Yep.
And probably it's useful in various ways.
Yep.
Another way would be to go for the application first and then backwards track, what do we actually need to do research on to be able to do something like a self-driving car.
Yep.
And then from that, you start to build up more and more kind of problems, and you need to do not only engineering, even though engineering is the main thing first. So engineering first approach. Is that a good term for it?
I like that, but I think a mix of both is probably important because we can bet on the wrong things. But it's very a successful experiment says so much more than an interesting thought.
Can I quote Steve Jobs?
Okay.
I think he puts it really well.
Yeah.
The doers are the real thinkers.
Yeah, sure.
Because the doers are really, when they are stuck with the real operational problem, and the complexity of that is needing to solve the real problems. So the doers are the real thinkers. So
I like that, but I have this kind of I also like philosophy a lot, and I know that's necessarily not doers, so it's a bit.
Yes.
Why am I watching so much philosophy videos on YouTube?
This context, right? So maybe what Elon Musk is doing now with understanding the perceptions, the vectors, the perception, and then moving it into vector space, and then moving it into cognition or making choices and decisions in vector space, is doing more for understanding fundamentally what is cognitive, cognition and in artificial cognition.
What would you like to get out of AI as it is now? Why is it interesting to you?
For me?
Yeah.
I think fundamentally for society, it's understanding very, very harshly the automation and optimization of more knowledge-intensive work. And for that reason, that's what businesses want to get out of it. And ultimately, for people in society to participate and be well-functioning and successful, needs to understand how they are acting in that context. So for me, what I want to get out of it is to understand how that works and the steps there, in order for me to be useful, for my family to be, for society to be useful, to be relevant, and not in a sense end up in a big divide between very, very few companies who understands this,
sure,
and the rest of society who doesn't have a clue.
Yeah, so it's good that everyone can be in that. But
so for me, what I want to get out of AI is to understand this and basically betting on the fact that inclusion, and the more we are that is following that path, it will be less disruptive for economic society in many ways.
Yep.
So, but okay, then you can ask me what do I want to get out of AI from myself. I want to surf more.
Exactly. That's a good one. It's like I want to liberate people from labor or something. That's basically what we're saying. We want people to do things that they want to do, not things that we have to do.
But I think it's an inevitable path. So are we liberating people from labor, or are we stealing labor away from them?
Sure.
It's a perspective, right?
Yep.
What I want to get out of it is that people are part of the ride and having fun and surfing the wave instead of being drowned by the AI tsunami.
Yep. But then another I would like to follow up with saying, do we need to do AGI to do this? Probably not, right?
Not at all.
So like whatever we're already doing.
That's not an AGI goal at all.
Exactly, right? So this is interesting to work in a field where people have an idea that we're kind of two types of personalities. Many people are interested in AGI for reasons, and I'm not.
I'm more with you. I'm more with you.
Glad to hear that.
Yeah.
But why do we need to have interest in AGI? I mean, like we need to.
I want to make cool guitar pedals. That sounds cool. Right? That's.
We need to talk about your Max Martin adventure.
Oh yeah.
We haven't done that yet.
I think this is a typical example of what is really the difference between engineering first and research first in AI.
Yeah.
Either you think about, I want to have this cool AI system, an AGI system, or you think, I want to be able to do stuff.
I want to
I want to stop doing some stuff. I want to stop, shuffling or packages into some kind of box.
Yep. Automation is cool for that reason.
Instead, focus on the things that I'm really interested in, like surfing.
No, or actually, let me be more. It's going to sound idiotic when I say it afterwards. I want AI to solve the climate crisis.
Sure.
Which is a valid, useful.
Yeah.
I mean, we need to usefully optimize how we do things in order to not kill ourselves.
Yeah, definitely.
But it's on the engineering side. I don't really give a shit if it's AGI or not, as long as we save the planet.
Yeah.
Right?
Sure. I mean, I feel that.
But okay, so then I flip it, and I put myself on the other side of the argument. Why is it so important that someone is doing research on AGI and all these things? I mean, like, one argument is, of course, we need to understand on the trajectory we are on with AI, and then you add Kurzweil's law of accelerating returns, and we don't even understand how fast this is going to go. So we better start thinking about fundamental consequences.
That's a really good point, right? If you accidentally build it, we want to know.
Exactly, right?
Sure.
And also along the way, even if we haven't built it, we sort of say we are more scared of the narrow AI sometimes, going rogue, than the general AI. So these fundamental topics that opens up from the AGI philosophical domain and that research is super important to understand that we make the right choices on this trajectory.
Sure, I buy that.
So I think it has super usefulness to do that research in order to realize how we need to do the engineering bit.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So like a good mix is probably the right answer. But but it's still weird to work as a machine learning engineer and stuff and think about self-thinking machines that are sentient so much.
But are they ever?
No, I don't know. But like, if I was a web app developer, I wouldn't have this discussion so often. But since I work with PyTorch rather than Django,
then somebody asks you this, and you say, "What the fuck?"
But I don't know. Like, okay,
that's funny.
I think it's so refreshing to hear this. I think also the term that Elon Musk often use. You can hear narrow AI, you can hear general AI, you can hear the Jan LeCun human level AI. I think his term is real world AI.
Okay. Yeah.
And I can see the point of that. And it's not, why even go, I think human level AI is wrong for many reasons.
Yes.
We shouldn't build an AI that is human-like. I think why should that necessarily be the case? I think we should build AI that's good for what's that good for, which could be very different from what humans are good for. But it needs to operate in the real world. So as long as we have some kind of real world AI that can drive a car or steer a rocket or operate in the brain or build these tunnels or whatever, or control Twitter, whatever he's doing these days, I don't know. I think that's the important thing, and then I think the term, my favorite term is actually real world AI. I think that is what we should steer for.
Elon Musk coined real world AI.
Yeah, I think probably other people that said it as well. I just heard it from him.
And how do you understand the distinction then? Because we are talking about how to apply AI that works in the real world, rather than.
I mean, if you just compare it to the four: narrow, general, human, and real world.
Yeah.
Narrow, of course, being able to play chess, but only that, and play or train from scratch every time to simply do that. Human level is basically having an intelligence level similar to the human performance.
Mimicking what?
Not mimicking, but it's. I mean, I don't think it should mimic it the way the human brain works. That doesn't have to be human level. At least it is performing it can do tasks that humans are good at as well. And that's, I would say, is human level.
But human-like intelligence would infer all the different things humans are good and bad at, which makes no fucking sense.
It makes, So, but human, if you just look at the definition of human level, that basically means AI is good at the same things as.
So they're already better in math.
And then we have real world, which is different from narrow, general, and human level. And real world would simply be it's good at doing stuff in the real world, and potentially much better than humans in some tasks, and potentially bad at some tasks that humans are good at. But the point is that it's good in doing stuff useful for the real world.
Yeah, usefulness. I was like, that's the simple definition. Real world usefulness.
Yeah.
And then you can put saving the climate crisis. Yes. In the next sentence or whatever.
I guess it's weird for me to this is very utilitarian. We're talking about usefulness. It should be useful to be something that should affect the real world in a positive direction. I make music stuff. It's hard to argue that that's directly useful.
Why not?
I believe that culture, a strong culture, art and stuff is the best way of making a society healthy. But it's super indirect. So it's okay, you could take your programmer skills and maybe math-ish understandings to work on cancer research instead of making background music for YouTube.
But music can be very medicinal.
I believe that, but it's just that the usefulness is clearly not my main objective.
No. I think it is. I think
long term, yes.
No. I think you just need to read up on your Thomas Edison.
Okay.
Thomas Edison, as one of the best and most famous inventors in the world, has all the famous Thomas Edison codes, and by the way, they came out a nice bunch of them because it was 100 years since he died or something like that, just the other week.
He made excellent light bulbs.
Yeah, by the way. But he made fantastic quotes.
Okay.
By the way. And one of his quotes, and now I'm paraphrasing, is basically, I only want to work on inventions which are useful, which means that sells that people are willing to pay for. So whatever you're doing that someone is willing to pay for is useful.
Yeah.
So in this sense, music makes us feel good. It's super important to the human.
Sure.
Enough for me to pay for a subscription or whatever. Enough for me to do my daily job as a YouTuber or whatever. So in that sense, it's useful in the macroeconomics of the world. So I think it's useful.
Yeah.
And then so the definition of Thomas is basically
if it makes money,
can it sell?
Okay.
Is someone
do you see any potential problems with that objective? Could there be some misalignment?
Yes, of course. But the core problem is it a problem useful enough? Are we?
It's a good heuristic problem.
Actually, the heuristic is are we willing to pay for this?
Sure.
And if you think about pay, am I willing to pay to fix the climate crisis?
Yeah, but I'm probably not. Most people seem to be not okay with doing that, which is weird because we probably should. We're very short term.
Yeah, we are short term.
So
touche.
I don't know,
but I was just going to help you. I was trying to help you find your usefulness.
Yeah, no, I mean maybe. Yeah.
Should we just move quickly into another? I'd just like to hear your thoughts about that. I don't know what your thoughts are about this topic, but what do you think about symbolic reasoning and the importance of that?
Before you go in, we need to do that. We need to hear the Max Martin story, what you've been working on.
Yeah,
both, but go there
Both
first.
at once.
No, start with one. If you could.
Go there first. I just wanted to make sure we don't miss that.
So the symbolic reasoning thing, I imagine that this divide between like there's one AI professor over there and there's another AI professor over there that's connectionist, and you do Lisp symbolic stuff and you do feed forward fully connected stuff. This will just kind of be blurred out over time. Like we already see kind of some examples where you can have tokens in your deep learning thing, and they are discrete, right? Working with discrete things is a very hot topic.
We had discrete inputs and features forever.
But I could imagine like connecting the output from that back into this stuff. So going in a recurrence or of some kind. Like I don't know if you've read Dream Coder, the paper. No. It's a very weird title, but it's an interesting idea of saying we want to make a system that can learn to solve tasks by figuring out how to write algorithms and compose them somehow. Oh. It's like there are things like that where you have like, is this symbolic? Like, yeah, it is kind of. It's a bit of both. So symbolic AI might just become a natural part of the deep learning stuff, maybe. Like,
do you have a good definition of it? I don't, but I have some thoughts about it. But what's the?
I think it's like induction, that people really like the inductive things, right? So like you can find if you have a system that finds the pattern, then it will extrapolate. I think that's the attractive thing about symbolic things, right?
You are saying that like deep learning models cannot.
I don't know if they can, but people usually use this as an argument. Like they mostly interpolate between scene examples. If you had a symbolic approach, you would get extrapolation for free. You would learn the induction here, and you would pretend like, 1 + 1 is 2. So thus, it always knows infinitely all of the numbers, and that we maybe lose this in the deep learning stuff. But I could imagine that these are orthogonal tools that kind of complement each other. So I don't think there will be a. I mean, okay, the ongoing arguments between famous people. That
we
seems,
know who, but
yeah. That seems more like it's like, okay, you want funding, you argue, you're famous, and you cannot just whatever.
One of the famous in AI, the other one is not famous.
Yeah, but something like that.
That's the best summary I've heard before.
But in terms of just the technology side of it, there are interesting things in like having discrete tokens and inductive things. So
but discrete tokens been around forever. It's nothing specifically symbolic about that, I would argue.
So okay, let's say like this then: quick sort or minimal spanning tree and all of these famous algorithms.
Hard-coded rules.
Yeah. Could they be included somehow in this little differentiable graph in a useful way? That it's actually like, that was a good trick.
Let me try something. I mean, some people say it's about explicit symbolic manipulation, that a symbol needs to be represented in whatever kind of system you have that can be reasoned about somehow or manipulated somehow.
Yeah.
And some people say it's about the binding problem, the binding being that you can bind some value to a variable, which you can in a programming language.
Yeah.
And this is potentially something missing in deep learning networks today.
Yeah.
That you don't have a clear binding of things to some variable that you then use to manipulate and reason about in a good way. And I've heard even Jan LeCun argue or say that this is something missing that we have in the current system, that we can't really reason about some kind of variable in an efficient way.
But okay.
Or would you? Okay, please.
No, but it's like that sounds a bit like saying like the difference between a purely functional program and a more classic procedural imperative. Multiple statements go towards the solution. That what we may be missing is that you have one big function and it does one evaluation and you get what you get. And that you would like some more like multi-statement thing.
Or at least going from step to step. But then if you think about this kind of imperative processing happening, of course, in programming languages, at least in not declarative one, but more imperative one, wouldn't you argue that playing chess or Go or StarCraft or using reinforcement learning for different things is imperative in some way?
Yeah, RL is very imperative. It's mutating and taking choices based on what you just mutated. So
and that is also very like gradient based, backward propagation based, right?
Sure.
At least the one performing the best today are, right?
Yep.
So you can still in some way have imperative thinking, if we call it that, in deep learning systems today.
Yep.
I think some people also say that the whole experience playback thing or replay that you have in AlphaGo, etc., is potentially a symbolic manipulation thing. And if that is what you mean with symbolic reasoning, that you have a system that is not only the model but also combined with some hard-coded logic on top of it, like the experience replay, I would argue even that if you take beam search or whatever, that's also hard-coded things in looking at different prediction trajectories or paths forward. Is also hard-coded, and if that is what you mean, then we already today have very symbolic or hybrid systems, and basically all of them are that today.
So it sounds like you solved this dilemma. I kind of already have it.
But the dilemma is not a dilemma. It's
I think it's really
orthogonal, and they will be solving and working together over time.
That's what it feels like.
So it's not either or, it's hybrid symbiosis. We're gonna find ways how they.
There's been very similar kind of arguments between famous professors about stuff, where it's usually been the case that the classic is like domain expert in, let's say, signal processing. So it's not like that this multi-layer perceptron gets really good numbers on the benchmark, so the benchmark is no longer meaningful. But it's like, okay, but you solved the thing with the stupid method, and the smart method, it got outperformed on a narrow little benchmark, and then you shift the goalpost, and then you argue. Is this a genuine concern for progress, or is this more like a gatekeeping, my thing is the thing? Yeah. And it's always that kind of problem. So in this particular, these arguments, the most fun follow-up on, let's say, Twitter is when someone goes like, none of us actually cares.
That's another t-shirt.
But
symbolic versus...
I don't know if they are so versus, really.
We should have a t-shirt. Symbolic versus connectionism. Who the fuck cares?
But we do have problems with deep learning, though, right? I feel it in my daily work.
It's not sufficient, right?
No, exactly. There's missing pieces, and I have missing problems. I have things I want to express that I cannot express. For example, a variable number of outputs.
But Anders, or maybe you as well, Carl. I mean, like Janne Kuhn has done a lot of effort lately to try to pinpoint what are the missing pieces we should be working on, and a little bit like he's basically, please PhDs start doing that stupid research, GPT-3, and start working on this bloody important research. What is that?
Energy-based models, right? Is his claim.
I mean, there's a couple of things.
But I really I'm on board with that.
So what is it that Janne Kuhn is highlighting as these are the key missing pieces that really will make us
But progress. It doesn't seem like he's actually committing to doing research on the missing pieces. He's doing like research on a very promising puzzle piece that we know should be there, right? Self-supervision stuff gives good.
But okay, so. Okay, maybe reframe. So self-supervision, dude, if we really want to get to this, we can't annotate all the shit. We need to find
something
other ways.
Like that, right?
We need to
use
figure
the structure
out,
in the
we
data.
need to do something. We need to have another approach to annotation, or annotation is dead. It's not going to work.
Yeah.
So self-supervision is one key area we need to figure out.
Yeah.
Okay, what else are there?
But that feels like that's his main focus, and that's great, I think. The more like what is really missing, I will work actively on that. That sounds more like in the deep learning bubble, it's more like a Joshua Bengio thing, maybe to do like more of a, what are we entirely missing?
Oh, what's that then?
But I don't read those papers.
It's a whole JEPA paper. I think we should have a proper, we don't have time now.
Yeah. This is the JEPA paper.
This is a JEPA paper.
Okay, I would love to read it.
So
you read it and you come back.
Yeah, that would be great. Or we argue about it on Twitter.
Yeah.
No. Here. the real stuff happens here.
I mean, it's a number of things. It's a world state that is missing. It's the embedding part of it that you reason in embedding space. Similar to stable diffusion, by the way. The big difference with stable diffusion and DALI and
working in latent space or not.
Working in latent space, and it's also having a hierarchical kind of embedding. So it's one embedding feeding the other, getting increasingly abstract in their embedding space. Yep. So you can reason about more and more generic things, both time-wise and whatnot. And it's also using these kind of energy-based approaches of not really predicting a single scalar or output, but instead predicting in latent space.
Yep.
Both the input and output is in embedding space, which is, I would argue, how the human brain works.
Probably, yeah.
These are energy based in my view.
And used to be a little bit sharper. Is this what we are missing in relation to the steps towards general AI?
That's his claim.
Could we? Maybe that's his claim, but I would argue, is this steps to becoming better at world AI even? Real world AI would benefit from these ideas as well.
Have you had time to look at GLOM, the Jeffrey Hinton thing?
No.
Because I watched half of that lecture and felt like this is really interesting, and then I started playing PlayStation instead. But I should watch the last half of it because it's like an attractive idea. It's I guess an extension of Capsule Network's ideas of this kind of world knowledge, or somehow reusing things from low-level abstraction to high-level abstraction, and to connect this in a nice way.
Have you seen any follow-up of the capsule networks, by the way?
Basically, that is the thing. That is the follow-up. That he said something like, capsule networks felt like an idea. I think he said like, so there are ideas that wants to work, and there are ideas that kind of don't want to work. And capsule networks was a little bit in between. It kind of wanted to work, but not really. And they did a lot of cool stuff that, it's not mainstream, so it's not like I've had time to read it. But GLOM seems to be the follow-up. And let me watch the last half and we can talk about it.
Should we go to, you had another topic, what's the next thing? Or
this is the cliffhanger, we leave the cool stuff to the last. So what's the deal now? You worked a little bit, you work with Epidemic Sound, but you've been sidetracked a little bit and working, I would argue, a passion project.
For me, yeah.
And
Excellent Audio does music
and there is a Max
tools.
Martin connection just as to make it sound cooler.
I guess
this is the clickbait for the.
But he is one of the investors of that company. But
so what were you doing? What's this all about? What were you doing? And this was like, and now you're going back to Epidemic again. But so tell us this story.
Excellent Audio was cool. It's music production tools for people that wants to make music. So you sit with your laptop, you have a synth that sounds like a drum or something, and then you make a beat, and then you record some guitar, and you make a metal song. And that's been something they've been really good at. I use that for my albums that I have on Spotify. The drum stuff is from their plugin. And the next evolution of such tools will and should be that the tool is not just entirely dumb, that you need to program open hi-hat, closed hi-hat, open hi-hat manually. Just like, give me syncopation with my bass guitar, please, as any reasonable starting guess would be. So we kind of worked a lot on that, or like making smart tech to music production plugins, VSTs technically.
So VSTs to plugins for music productions, which basically allows you to have different sounds into your...
Yeah, so like you buy a MacBook, you install a music recording software, and in that you have plugin software that we call VSTs.
So you're both like music experts, and I'm not. So what's a VST?
It's a plugin software that you run inside, let's say, Adobe Photoshop, but for making music. So you have a recording software where you need an effect. You need like a cool reverb or distortion.
And the simplest would
be... And that comes from a sub-library that we call a plugin software.
The simplest approach, if you ever use Mac, you can get Garage...
they come with a lot that bundled stuff.
It comes with a lot of bundles with basic music editor. And you can buy these the way you have, that allows you to put different tracks down and put music on. And then you put it to your keyboard, and then you are missing sound, so you want more fancy stuff.
I want acoustic drums. I don't own any. I want to buy some wave files, but I don't want to move around wave files manually. That sounds horrendous. I want a beat. So you buy a plugin software that gives you some rhythm slider, and you can make like a cool thing with the right tempo and stuff.
And I can take it one step further. I buy a half-ass decent Roland digital piano. And the digital piano now has a very good interface.
But also good sounds.
They have their fixed 50 sounds, 100 sounds, and they actually got decent keyboard sounds. But all of a sudden now, I feel like I want to use my keyboard for synthesizing other sounds, but actually then want to take my iPad, plug it in. I want to lay down different tracks. I even want to lay down drum tracks and all that. And I can use my keyboard to sort of play around with it. Yeah. But I need more sounds. I need other things. And this is where VSTs come in, plugins into the whole mix.
The industry would be called pro audio. And the pro audio industry, the pro audio software industry, is a very peculiar industry in terms of like being old school. It's C code, C++ code maybe. Windows XP is still relevant.
Yeah, it's funny.
Because music studios don't really change. So like, the computer,
Atari,
it works well.
Does the Atari system still
Perhaps
work?
even. So like, but this like is a very conservative consumer that doesn't really upgrade. And they don't have internet, and the whole field is slowly saying maybe we should use the internet in our plugins. And that's an interesting thing. Like machine learning a lot is driven by saying similar users like you behave like this, so maybe you want to have this sound for your thing. And that is maybe the transition now that the pro audio community is going to maybe integrate, like, you can auto sync your saved presets to cloud solutions. You log in on your new MacBook and you get everything for like downloaded. So have some cloud backup, that thing, and also to get like smart suggestions. So what we were working on, and they're still working on it, is to make some form of like let users make their own sounds. Not only buy a library of pre-recorded snare drums that sounds really good and it's very useful, but perhaps you have your own, I don't know, your grandma has a cool piano, you would like to use it, but you never really have the time to go there and sample it because that sounds boring.
So what we're talking about here is an industry, and Max Martin is one of the investors.
He needed drums, I guess.
Yeah.
So,
So he needed drums back in the day,
Yeah.
and started a company with a plug-in, and they did something. Is it 10 years ago?
Yeah, it's 2005 or something.
2005, he starts a company who builds something, and it sells.
It's still selling. So if you go to Reddit,
the fundamental technology and setup is from 2005.
Because it sounds great. It's very performant. It's an intuitive tool.
And we are now thinking about, okay, what is the plugin of the next decade?
Yeah.
What is the
plugin?
Like
it should. I mean, it would be weird if what we've been doing in the since 2005
with everything else happening around us.
Yeah.
Oh my God, 2005 is Stone Age, right?
But in the pro audio plugin world, they haven't really moved as fast
has
as
worked. The usefulness of what they did in the first iteration has been huge. It's been great, and people have been happy with it.
Yeah, it sounds great, but it's an interesting domain of software where the same software is still actively selling a lot because it is good and it works.
But maybe the problem is is this software that is still selling based on the original code, more or less.
Yep.
C++.
Yeah. It becomes pretty
Windows
interesting.
XP.
Yeah, it's an interesting code base. I mean, for good and bad, right? It's not like it's a bank, right? They have similar, like, here's the old stuff.
The bank is the same as this bank.
So, so making the internet, or that it's more of a dynamic thing that you get responses from when you do things, which is a very fluffy way of explaining machine learning. But it would be cool to have some kind of recommender thing. I have this guitar. Okay, then you probably want this snare drum. Okay, more heavy, please. Click. And then you confirm that suggestion, and then we maybe retrain overnight, and we make better suggestions over time.
That's a tricky point to understand, the user.
Yep.
What is really useful.
But that's the argument for making it a machine learning problem, that we assume we cannot understand every user's particular interests or use cases. So we probably want a big chunky model to tune for it over time, instead of having our own assumptions.
In order to make
personalization
simple or more accessible, or very
fun, I guess, it would
fun
be the word.
And intuitive.
So it would be nice. A good plugin is that you put in, you get out more than you put in. That was a really nice framing from Lars, the founder of XLN. That like we want a good plugin is like when you get more out of it than you put into it.
Okay, let me.
Otherwise, it would be just work.
I want to be a beta guy because I can sit and fool around.
The internal prototype is pretty cool, actually.
Can I have it? Because I have now. I've composed a new. I should have brought my keyboard today. So a keyboard and you I composed something.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
I think it's fun.
Yeah.
But I'm now. Oh my God! I don't want to go in. It would be cool to do a couple of layered and do some stuff on this. But as a prosumer, not even pro.
Yeah, I guess I'm the same prosumer.
No. Prosumer, amateur. Yeah. I would love to have this handheld guided approach because the plugin market now is hugely different. Are you going into a professional studio or are you going into Henrik's house?
Yep.
Very different.
Sure.
And Henrik really needs a plugin, by the way. But not the same maybe as the professional studio.
Maybe. Or maybe they should be adapting to their user. But yeah, sure. Some good onboarding and stuff.
Just following these discussions and thinking more long term here now, what would you say the current like research directions in music? I guess you call it informatics or whatever the term is. That we really should focus on. Do you have any thoughts about that?
I mean, so there's a bit of different trends. I think we want to make co-creation tools that kind of fit into the, like, okay, we make music, we listen to music. What we don't want to do is automate it away from people, because that's kind of feels like by definition meaningless.
To empower people, not replace people?
Yes, or like maybe I'm mostly interested, like a lot of the talks in AI is about like how can we make it more efficient? Oh, that's cool, great. You can make like fewer people work on more things or more things with the same number of people or something. Search a catalog that's huge and get pretty good research results. But I'm primarily interested in saying what is the new kind of music expressions, the new types of genres or guitar sounds or the instruments even that don't exist today, but that will exist tomorrow because these technologies will become music tools.
Right.
It's like, what will those sounds be? And I could imagine them sounding pretty good. Like going back, if you had a time machine, you went back 30 years before laptops became normal in EDM or something. And then you went forwards 30 years. You would go like, whoa, that's a pretty neat sound. And the same thing will happen 30 years from now. It's going to be like, TikTok generation of today will make sounds that I will first go like, nah, that's not proper music. Granddad likes the rock band. But I'm looking forwards to having like guitar pedals that understand their context instead of saying I make the distortion as you set it to be statically. More like dynamic,
dynamically
tools.
Intelligent pedals.
I mean, like a conversation. The hardware that you have in your guitar pedal or in your laptop, it should understand its context. Like we haven't even opened up that box of potential.
So instead of going into efficiency of replacing...
No, new expressions.
We're talking about new expressions in the actual pedal of the guitar.
Yes, for example, that. Or beat making, rhythms, layering of instrumentation. So many things that could be a conversation with your computer instead of you being music production is a lot like being a programmer. You're sitting there and giving explicit rules to a software.
Could that be a field where you think, today it's very much like a person together with a computer produce a piece of music and it's static, it's done, and you listen to it.
That's weird.
That's it.
Yeah, that's weird.
Could you, you can think about games potentially. That is a personalized experience. You interact with it, you work with it.
Yeah.
It's produced once, but then the user decides on how to use it and interact with it.
And that would be that's gonna feel so obvious in 10 years. Like you're gonna have these kind of procedurally generated albums. You're gonna go to some Chrome tab, and here's people have done this, and it's been kind of gimmicky. It hasn't been normal because I guess it's not good enough. But I can't imagine how we do music today to be the thing, how we do it tomorrow. Really, like here's a track of 3 minutes that I manually clicked out in Ableton. Like, what? Weird? That sounds super weird.
In 10, 20 years, or I'm not sure what the time
Can you unpack this? I'm halfway there, but I'm not really following. Are we talking about the consumer having the
that's
power?
one aspect of it. I guess
consuming having the power of sort of, I want this with more bass.
Perhaps.
Or were you going into the
I was focusing mostly on the producer side, but the consumer side is also interesting.
Exactly.
And both of these can be.
Okay, so unpack the
adapted.
producer side. I wasn't this was over my head. I love the idea.
The production side of it.
The production side of this personalization. What was that all about?
Right. So, for example, it would be nice when I sit down in Reaper, I play electric guitar, I make a rhythm. It would be very nice if the MIDI sequencer, where I'm putting down my VSTI with snare kick. It would be very nice if that plugin somehow understood the context in which this sound is my sound. Like usually when you make the drums, you want to have this syncopation here. So we recommend it for you now. And I will go, not this once. I want a new thing now.
So it's almost like a
personalization in my flow. Like
it learns your flow and it adapts to your flow.
I have a sound, right?
It adapts to your sound.
Yeah,
that's what you're talking about.
The product of music may not be static anymore. You can have.
That's also very cool.
Right, you can have personalized production. That's one thing. Yep. But it could also be personalized consumption.
That's what I was. That's the one I understand when I listen to you.
That's also a very important thread. I think like the track-based model of a catalog of tracks will probably feel a bit old.
It is, yeah. Right.
We're seeing some startups doing that, like procedurally generated content for your videos.
Sound, you can get 4-6 tracks. You can get track separation sometimes.
There's multi-track recordings.
Recordings, and then you can
stems,
stems, I guess.
Yeah, but we don't make a music track for your video yet. There are startups trying that, and most of it is like Lego blocks of looping together things with some rules, or maybe some smart rules or some dumb rules. It doesn't sound great, but again, like, give it some time. I can't imagine that the track-based catalog that was originally was a physical thing, right? You made a vinyl, it's a physical thing. It has a finite duration.
We don't have this on 3 minutes each. It's so weird that we
super
still
weird.
have that.
Yeah.
Right.
That we even have numbered tracks is weird.
I need to ask a personal
I like
question.
albums though. Yeah.
Question: what are you most excited? Going back to Epidemic Sound soon. What are you most excited upon? You know, what are the things sort of? This is the stuff that I want to work on.
Yeah. Okay. So the secret buzzword here is diffusion models. But
Okay, unpack that a little bit.
DALL-E 2, number 2 here, uses a technique called diffusion. DALL-E 1 did not. It's an interesting mathematical thing that I don't really understand it yet. But it's interesting to say, like, what if we did exactly this, but maybe for an audio signal instead? And there are like research papers that have done this, and they sound pretty okay, way better than previous ideas about generating a sound effect. And if we took like engineering muscle and actual like full stack expertise and said, let's take this research into an actual product feature, it will be quite interesting to see how that kind of materializes. I could imagine it becoming an like obvious feature that people will go like, similar to live search. If you go to a website today and you write in a text field and it doesn't immediately return results, you will go like, is my website broken?
Exactly.
You will feel something similar with finding a good sound effect for your video, or maybe a mixing of the music, cutting it shorter, 8 seconds for the intro. You will feel like, how can it not give me the adapted version?
Exactly.
What is this old wave file?
So that was the joke I was I mean, my dream, and this is going down.
I think that's going to be perhaps the new normal.
Diffusion models is part of that.
That's a promising tool that might lead to this dream.
And I guess a very simplistic definition or description of diffusion models is simply that you generate things by adding noise to it and then reconstructing the original content.
Which, I mean, if one dares to say it, it sounds quite self-supervised.
It is, absolutely.
But no, but that might be the tool from the toolbox that we will try.
So this was something that sort of lured you back into.
Yeah, it's very interesting because like we have a strong team of people that are really into it, and like the nice thing about the machine learning people at Epidemic Sound is that everyone is very full stack. Ooh. Like I don't have to teach anyone to run black on their Python code, which sounds like, why do you ever need to teach anyone? Everyone there is very solid.
To be clear here,
auto formatter, right?
Yes, so it's a Python style thing fixer.
But now we are so over time.
Yeah, I know. Sorry.
But
it can be quite
you took me into the topic now. There is an interesting topic around data platforms for less than 30 people.
Yeah.
Do's and don'ts of thinking about it. And then basically going into how to think about full stack versus not full stack and all that. Do we have time for that?
I don't know, but it's fun. I mean, just short, it's the first step for a company that builds tech things is that they need to understand that they want to do it at all, and then how to do it is the second thing. But I feel like Epidemic has gone to we've been through the what should we do? We should have a data platform. Okay, great. Everyone is on board. Great. And we're almost kind of like how to do it. That's kind of quite mature. So we can kind of maybe reap the fruits from that labor of having a senior data engineering team that takes care of that. So I don't need to go to the original, where is the stuff? I need a wave file. Where is it? Oh, it's on my inbox, on my email. Like what?
So data platform, the fundamental
that kind of
stuff is...
That's a core component, I think, and it should be.
And then you said something, this was before the vlog, how, fundamentally, even if you're a 30-man startup, it becomes quite important to think about these topics.
I think so, yeah. To stay relevant, at least. You don't want to play the FOMO card, but product companies' data is like not only something that you have, it's something that you build things with, and to acknowledge that this is a really important kind of sacred artifact that we want to do things with. That feels like it shouldn't be such a hard sell, but it can be. Like, okay, so the actual value, for example, with Epidemic Sound, is that there is so much high quality music data.
Yeah.
And they know this, and that's why it has a clean API around it, so you can work with it as a data scientist. but it's not like you knew it from the start. First it's like, oh yeah, we have this because that's what we sell to end users. They get this music. And like, oh, you can build things on it. Oh, that's novel. And this journey has to happen for companies, that they understand that their data is actually the secret sauce.
But and here now comes back to the whole, my hometown with enterprises and the buzzwords with the CEOs. We want to be data driven. Or even worse, we want to be AI driven. AI driven needs data driven. Needs you recognizing and preciously guarding your pristine data. And so
it's a really sacred thing.
And so if you don't have that fundamental understanding of the sacredness of the data and keeping it pristine and creating APIs so people can use it, how can you ever say anything about AI driven and data driven if that fundamental core?
And to explain this to people, it can be quite rough. So I like it when everyone knows this. What we're saying is basically we assume a scientific approach is the best approach, or the only really approach. We need to evaluate and have measures and numbers, and the data has to be in the right order.
So a scientific approach for anyone who hasn't done a PhD, you damn need to have your data sets in order and quality, pristine data in order to draw your hypotheses and conclusions on. So anyone can kill any scientific paper by just looking at your data set was shit, or your data quality was shit. So it's at the heart of a scientific approach.
And we're going to find that the companies will learn that the secret sauce to doing new product features is to really consider their existing data as like, oh, this is the fuel for the
Goran, can we make a cut of this last bit?
We probably...
not a cut as a split. I need this piece, and I need to send it to 1,000 people who doesn't really understand and value data in this level, and they don't understand data quality, and they don't understand the fundamental essence of everything starts here.
It's interesting that it's such a hard convincing thing, actually. It should be...
No, but
why shouldn't we always be subjective and trust our intuition? I'm kidding a bit.
No, but it's
you
can't build products on intuition.
I think you can build...
Some people think so, but...
you can't.
You can get up till a certain level, and then then you find that you kind of stop there.
We did an interesting experiment at Spotify once where we went through 20 A/B tests. And there were 30 senior product people in the audience, and he went through the 20 A/B tests. And the only thing we supposedly senior product people were supposed to do is to guess: was it better, was it an improvement, or something that decreased the user experience for these different A/B tests? And we thought, what would be the proper, or what we think the average performance will be of these people. 50% is just random. So if you got 50% right, it could just be a toss of coin, and we have no knowledge at all in what we do. I guessed, I thought I would have 75% right at least of these tests, and we did the test, and we then counted afterwards. It turned out that we had 39% correct.
So 1 minus the probability.
If it was worse than...
Give it to a monkey.
A monkey would be better.
Give it to a monkey.
30 senior product people in guessing how these A/B tests were performed. This is, I think, very telling.
It's a very hard lesson to... You can hear it, but you have to feel it also.
But Anders, I knew you had a monkey brain from the start. So there was nothing new today. Nothing new today.
But with that anecdote, that's an interesting data point, but it doesn't really stick in people's way of thinking so easily. Somehow, and I don't really get
why is this such a problem.
I don't really know. But I have been told you always take a very scientific idea or approach to stuff, and what's the alternative? I don't really get the alternative. And we'd had this with PhD friends and stuff talking about stuff, and we do it in a scientific way, and people think that's weird. But what is the opposite? On the other hand, you would say I'm a painter of art. Okay. First, I do an A/B test. What should I paint today? And that's a weird way of making a painting. So I guess there's some artisanal intuition.
Ooh, and you should hear in the big corporations, sales is an art.
Yeah, but the thing is, like, where is the boundary then? Because, like, if you said that with Hollywood movies, we know there became a bit of a science that they probably tune it on test audiences and stuff. But if Van Gogh stands and like A/B tests his paintings on different subsets of the crowd and like that will do it like this more, you would go, that's weird. So what's the difference really? Where do you draw the line between?
But in a big enterprise, we have so many different things. Also in a value chain, productivity, manufacturing, and all that.
Yep.
You know, where really it should be nothing else than hardcore facts and numbers, right?
So
what is yield of a production line?
Maybe, or if you have good numbers, there's uncertainty in knowing what you're measuring. But my heuristic is this: if the product feature depends on data, then you have to do it in a scientific way. If you're more like just building a nice design and you're measuring the success of it with experiments and data, then you could get away with the artisanal approach. But if the input that made the thing you're shipping was created from data, like a machine learning model, then there's really no way around the fact that you have to see it as a scientific thing or like a data-driven thing. Because it's by definition you used it as an input ingredient to compile your artifact.
Okay, now you made this really interesting, because if I talk an example like Epidemic Sound, Spotify, or something which is a tech company, and actually this becomes quite clear which camp you're in. Now if you go to an analog, a company with a proud analog history, 100 years been around, Vattenfall, Scania, whatever, and there is an analog core, what they have been doing. And now they try to understand what's the purpose of data and how will that change our business. I think a big change here is that they haven't. There's so much data produced around the truck, in the truck ecosystem, the truck transportation ecosystem.
So too much, or
which essentially now is the new raw material for new products. And I think this is one of the leaps that we haven't really figured out. That we understand this product, and this is a physical product. And here, how can I add data? Okay, I can do a little bit, I can do optimization, but it's not the core business as such. So it's the difference here now when data needs to be pristine to optimize the core business, and when data becomes the core business. So when data becomes the core business, as in Epidemic Sound, I think in the end, intuitively everybody will get on board, right?
Probably,
But here, in the old-fashioned way, when the core business that we 100 years legacy in culture and ways of working around is really tricky. It's even worse.
That's an interesting.
I'm just trying to sort out that we have a lot of industries where the data hasn't been the core product, but it probably will be quite soon when the core physical asset is commoditized.
Probably.
I don't know. This is so weird in terms of getting this message across. We need to care about the data.
But it's gonna solve itself, I guess. People will figure it out.
But you know what's the weird thing? The weird thing is that these companies pour a lot of money into AI because it's the hype, without pouring the money into quality data or APIs to the data. Well, that's interesting.
That's
right? That's just really anti-pattern.
That's going to be a bitter lesson.
Anyway.
Very, very sad ending note.
No, better ending.
But the data is good stuff, so we should have.
So to make the ending positive, Anders.
Yes.
Help me out with a positive ending here, so we're not getting delusionized.
Will you have a beer later tonight? That's a positive ending.
Okay, that's a best ending.
No, but you're an awesome person, Carl.
Thank you.
I don't think
Likewise.
people understand how knowledgeable you are, and I wish that you had. I wish you will continue to do an awesome impact in so many ways in the future.
Thank you.
And guide more people in how to make proper use of data and AI.
And I must give my reflection on this podcast today. It's been such a pleasure and awesomeness to sit and listen to something I don't understand. Fantastic, right? And
feels like you understand it, but
no,
right.
Everybody can sound cool, right?
Sure.
Know enough to be dangerous. You know that?
Oh, no, but it sounds great.
You know the stuff. I don't know the stuff, but I know enough to be dangerous. The key learning point here that I really want to stress is a little bit like for me, is that to listen to someone who really fluently now talks in a truly different space of mind in terms of living in the vector space, neural network space.
We're living in the vector space. Yes.
Living in the vector space. This is truly fucking Elon Musk. You guys are living in the vector space. I'm living in the real world. In the conversation today, and so fluently going into philosophical arguments, but you're still in the vector space. Do you see what I mean with this? You're talking about philosophical or thinkings around this, but you're still completely immersed in neural networks and the path of this. For me, it's so telling about the AI divide, that who is living in this space and who is not.
Yep.
And I think the only way to sort of bridge the gap is to get exposed to it. And then I learned so much today by exposing myself and asking the dumb questions, and basically just getting two major aha moments: how much I don't know, and how much this is a different world going on. And secondly, I need to learn more, and I need to work with people who knows.
Yeah,
I need to understand where I am. I need to understand who I need to recruit or work with.
Yep.
So I had a fantastic show today, guys.
Sweet. Likewise, it was very fun.
Carl, what's next in your life? What's happening coming weeks, months, personally, professionally?
I'm gonna play all of the Uncharted games because I'm behind on PlayStation games.
Oh,
that's an actual.
That's awesome.
This is true.
Are you a PS5 guy now?
I just bought one.
Good.
Yeah, I guess.
I have two at home.
All right.
Not
better,
for me, for my
better
kids.
than Apple, at least.
The weird part is I came home and Hanna was sitting playing it and being very frustrated. Like, but you're not gaming stuff. Like, oh, I know, I game. She's getting into it.
All right, so I need to get a grown-up game now. My kids are 16 and
Returnal.
14. Which one should I get? Returnal?
I thought it was pretty good. Yeah, try it.
Okay,
PS5. Yeah.
PS5. Returnal.
Very frustrating.
Anyone that you would recommend coming on this podcast?
Bob Stern.
Bob, where are you?
Yeah.
Good enough ending.
It would be great to hear him think about stuff.
Or we're gonna have Bob here.
We're going to have Bob here again.
But also he has a PhD student, which is quite cool.
Yeah.
Nicholas Jonasson could be interesting.
If you're listening, Bob, I hope you get well soon. Have an awesome
We miss you
evening.
here, Bob. It would have been awesome to have both you, Bob, here, and Carl.
Yeah,
that would have been even
that would be awesome. Yeah.
Or maybe Bob should be in the JEPA as well.
discussion panel. Yeah, maybe.
Anyway,
Good.
Björn Brinne.
Yeah, that could be a good idea. Awesome.
we need more
Cool.
techie. I mean, like I see
always want that.
you like a kid in a candy store when we have a bit more techie conversation. So we need to do that.
Cool.
I would love that.
Wrap it up.
Cool.
Wrap it up.
Thank you. Have an
Thank
awesome
you.
evening.
Take care. Bye bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.